To GB News' Red Wall special. We are in Sutton in Ashfield, the home of Lee Anderson, the now Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party, who nabbed this seat off Labour. We're going to be covering it all today. We're going to be talking about the cost of living crisis. We're going to be talking about migration. We're going to be talking about law and order. We are going to be talking about the issues that matter to real people in real constituencies. Make no bones about it. It's seats like Ashfield where elections are won and lost. This is GB News' Red Wall special. This is where elections are won and lost. I'm going to be asking real people real questions. Areas like Ashfield should be Labour. This is the Red Wall, but they went Tory last time. Will they go Labour again? What can Rishi Sunak do to convince them to vote for the Conservative Party? What are the main issues bothering them? Other news outlets swerve places like this. GB News gets stuck right in. I'll see you after the news.
Good afternoon. It's 1 minute past 3. Your top stories from the GB newsroom. 4 children, including a British national and an adult, have been injured in a knife attack in the French Alps. It's understood the knifeman's a Syrian national who was carrying Swedish identity documents. He entered France legally and wasn't previously known to security agencies. The 31-year-old carried out the attack in a playground in the alpine town of Annecy. Police say he's been arrested, that he was shot in the legs and has since been taken to hospital. And this is what we know about the 5 victims so far. 4 are children, all aged between 22 months and 3 years. 2 of the toddlers and the adult are in a life-threatening condition. Witnesses have said at least one of the children was in a pram at the time of the attack. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and the French President have condemned it as cowardly. Foreign Secretary James Cleverly says the family of the injured British toddler will be offered support.
We stand ready to support the French authorities in whichever way we can. Also aware that one of the children injured was a British national. We have already deployed British consular officials who are travelling to the area to make themselves available to support the family. And of course we stand in strong solidarity with the people of France at this terrible time.
An estimated 7.4 million people in England are waiting to start routine hospital treatment. That's the highest number since records began. More than 370,000 patients have been waiting more than a year for care and around 11,000 more than 18 months. It means the government and NHS England had failed in their ambition to eliminate all waits of more than 18 months by April of this year. It comes as senior doctors say the NHS is struggling to provide safe and effective care for all cancer patients. The Royal College of Radiologists warns that government action is now critical to alleviate chronic staff shortages, with 15% of clinical oncologist positions vacant. They say this is leading to longer waiting times for appointments and treatment, with half of all units reporting frequent delays for radiotherapy and chemotherapy. The Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, says the government is investing more.
Their report was focused on the health systems across the UK, so recognising the pressures in Wales and Scotland as well, that there has been a significant increase in demand, and that's why we're investing more. We're investing in 160 community diagnostic centres, we're investing in the surgical hubs programme, a further 43 new or expanded surgical hubs due this year, and we're also investing in the workforce, and that's why we're bringing forward a long-term workforce plan.
Elsewhere, Ukraine's military claims flooding in the Kherson region after the destruction of the Kakhovka Dam is forcing Russian troops to retreat by up to 15 kilometres. President Volodymyr Zelensky has been visiting the area where hundreds of thousands of people have been left stranded and without drinking water. There's concern the water level at the reservoir near the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is running dangerously low. Although it is currently stable, Ukrainian MP Kira Rudik told GB News there are potentially catastrophic consequences.
Zaporizhzhia nuclear station that is right now does not have the water to cool down because they were taking the water from the dam. A second threat that is that mines that were in the ground at the battlefield and near it, right now they're in the water and they can migrate whenever the water would go, and it will be the Black Sea. So the impact on Ukrainian people is absolutely dramatic.
Rishi Sunak has announced Britain will host the first global summit on artificial intelligence safety. The event will consider the need for internationally coordinated action to mitigate the risks of AI. The Prime Minister says there's a need to make the emerging technology safe and secure. Downing Street says the Prime Minister's discussing the opportunities and challenges of AI with President Biden at the White House this afternoon. Smoke from hundreds of Canadian wildfires has cast a huge smog over the skies of Washington, D.C., where the Prime Minister is, and New York City. More than a dozen US states were under air quality alerts yesterday, with officials urging residents to stay indoors. 1 million masks are being handed out at transportation hubs throughout New York, including Grand Central Terminal. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens now, though. It's back to Patrick over in Sutton.
Yes, hello and welcome to GB News' Red Wall Special with me, Patrick Christys, in Sutton, in Ashfield. And I am joined by Lee Anderson, of course, who is the Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party. Now, over the course of the day today, I've been walking around, I've been meeting people. It is areas like this where general elections are won and lost. And it's areas like this, frankly, that are all too quickly forgotten by the major parties, in my view. This is Red Wall, OK? So if Labour are going to win it back and they're going to win the election, they're going to have to win seats like this. I've been talking to people over the course of the day about what really matters to them, whether it's immigration, whether it's the cost of living, whether or not it's a variety of different issues. But Lee, why do you think it's so important that we are in places like this today?
It's important, Patrick, because it's not very often that a major news company comes into a real place and talks to real people to get real opinions of what's going on in the country. So whether it's good or bad or indifferent, it's vitally important that this message gets out, not just to other politicians and Parliament, but the whole of the country. Yeah,
look, you're going to be hearing a lot from Lee Anderson and myself, as well as other local councillors, etc., throughout the course of the day. There is an issue that is on people's lips here, whoever I talk to. It's the Channel migrant crisis, it's immigration, it's illegal immigration. And I think with that in mind, it is worth noting that, yes, OK, we are doing our big Red Wall special here from Sutton Ashfield, and we talk to local business people, we talk to local people, we're getting a flavour really of the mood on the ground and crucially who they're going to vote for at the next general election, which really is the point of the show. It's worth noting, I think, isn't it, what's happened in France and the issue there with a supposedly Syrian refugee who is, and I mean, I've seen the video, I'm assuming we're not showing it, has stabbed multiple people, children, really, in a park in France, including a toddler. It's horrific stuff. Before I go to Mark White, back at base at GB News, I'm going to bring in Lee Anderson. Lee, you've been very, very strong on illegal migration, on what's going on in the Channel. And frankly, I think it's issues like this, what's happened in France, that make it all the more important, like you, and frankly, everyone I talk to here, that we need to sort out what's happening in the Channel. National security.
Yes, it's heartbreaking, Patrick, to what's happened in France, but I suspect there'll be lots of people not surprised because for far too long we've got far too many people, not just into the UK, but all over Europe, undocumented young men. We don't know where they've come from. We don't know what the past is, whether they've got any criminal past or links to terrorism or anything like that. And, you know, because of that, this awful incident has happened today in France, and my heart goes out to the family, it really does.
No, absolutely. Look, we're going to give you a lot more detail on this. This is a fast-moving picture, and as far as I'm aware anyway, in the last half an hour or so, it's been confirmed, I think, that a British citizen was involved, sadly, in this incident in France. I'm going to throw over to Mark White now, who's our Home and Security Editor, who's got the very latest on this. Mark, an absolutely shocking, tragic incident in France.
Horrific, yes. We just had a news conference that was led by the French Prime Minister, who was giving us an update really on what the situation is with regard to the ongoing investigation and those injured. We had thought 5. That number has risen to 6. It's 2 adults and 4 children. And very disturbingly, all of the children, according to the Prime Minister, are described as being severely injured. We know that at least one of the victims was actually flown to Geneva in neighbouring Switzerland. Remember, this is a French alpine town not far from the border with Switzerland. Very, very popular with tourists. You're looking on the screen now at the immediate aftermath of this incident, with all of the French fire and civilian paramedic teams at the scene, along with air ambulances that were sent to take the most severely injured to hospital as quickly as possible. Now, as far as the alleged attacker is concerned, you're right, Patrick, it has been confirmed that he is a Syrian national who had travelled to Sweden some 10 years ago and claimed asylum. That asylum, we're told, was granted in April of this year. That individual then separated from his Swedish wife. We're told that he met, Patrick, his Swedish wife, when they were both in Turkey. Apparently, according to French media, they are both described as having been in the nursing profession. These reports and early reports are always subject potentially to correction, but that's what it's being reported at the moment, that they separated and that in the last few months he travelled to France. They say that he had no fixed address and that he'd been seen around this park. We've got some images which we'd like to play you as well that show the immediate aftermath of the attack. We're not showing the video that you've seen, Patrick, and you know, I've seen as well of the attack underway. But these images show the attacker in the park just after the attack on the children. You can see him in sunglasses, wearing that head covering and shorts, walking out of the gate to the play park. We actually, in the video, see him going back into that park on at least 2 occasions and targeting one particular infant in a stroller, with a really harrowing scene of this child's mother trying to get in between him and that, you know, in between the child and the attacker. Other images of him having just left the play park, then being followed by 2 members of the public carrying really just their backpacks as a rudimentary form of kind of shielding and protection, following him until the police got there. And Patrick, what they tell us is that actually it was a very swift police response, that within 4 minutes of the first calls going into the police, they had apprehended this man, shot him, we understand, in the legs. He's been treated for those injuries and he is now in police custody, hopefully in a position to be able to shed some light on what on earth his motivation for this horrific attack was.
Mark, thank you very, very much. It's Mark White, our Home and Security Editor. We will be right across this story, as indeed any more information develops. I was going to say it's shocking. It's not, though, is it? Unfortunately, because we see time and time again people raising legitimate concerns about our asylum policy, about what's going on in the Channel, not just about the cost, but about national security. And then you see absolutely, completely and utterly horrific incidents like the one that's happened in France. And we have actually had a very similar one over here, where an individual was stabbed to death, an aspiring Royal Marine was stabbed to death over an e-scooter by somebody who'd reportedly killed a couple of people in another country and been done for drug dealing in another country and then came over here. But anyway, I am now in Ashfield, which is a key red wall seat. This is our red wall special. We're going to be veering away, obviously, from what's been going on in France. I'm going to bring Lee Anderson back in. And Lee, we're just going to have a little walk up the high street here because I want to get to grips with what matters to people in the Red Wall seats? People here get spoken down to a lot. Other media outlets, I think, just pay lip service to them, frankly, and don't really care about what they really think. What matters to people in this seat? Because if Sunak's going to win, he's got to keep you.
Very proud constituency they are, Patrick. This is an area built on coal mining and textiles, hard-working people, working-class people that were repeatedly called thick and stupid and racist and bigoted during the Brexit referendum. 70% of the people in this area voted to take back control. That's what they did in 2016, and they're absolutely fed up. I mean, look at this high street here. It needs the investment, it needs the money from the Levelling Up Fund. We've already got £70 million coming into Ashfield. But there's one thing in common with Red Wall areas like this, the towns. They've always had a Labour MP, they've always had a Labour council, and they've always been ignored for donkey's years. I aim to change that, and my party aims to change that. And these people in a place like Ashfield, they deserve much better than what they've had over the last 50, 60 years.
Well, throughout the course of the show today, we're going to be drilling down on a few key issues. Immigration, obviously, is one of them. The cost of living crisis, law and order. This, exactly where we are now, actually, had a police station. It's now shut. Classic. So we're going to be talking about all of that. It comes just a day after it emerged that in a half of England and Wales, the police haven't solved a burglary in 3 years. I mean, let that sink in. So we're going to be talking about this. And crucially, I want to get to the very bottom of voting for the next general election. I'm not convinced that Keir Starmer's doing enough to win these people back. However, I can believe that Rishi Sunak is doing enough to lose them. So we're going to be getting stuck right into the nitty-gritty here. Cost of living, immigration, law and order, who are you voting for? And as well, interestingly, what they really think about woke stuff. Can they bring themselves to vote for a man who thinks that women can have a penis? Patrick, Christys in the Red Wall for our Red Wall special. See you in a tick.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Yes, hello and welcome to Sutton in Ashfield for GB News' Red Wall special. This is the heart of the Red Wall, OK? It's seats like this where general elections are won and lost. So we're going to be talking to people throughout the course of this show and finding out what really matters. Jettison you back, I think, to Liam Halligan now, who is our economics and business editor, who has got some information for us about the economics, about areas like this, the Red Wall seats, because it was supposed to be all about levelling up, wasn't it? And look, I've got to be honest with you, I think people had a degree of sympathy when it came to the coronavirus pandemic. Unprecedented times. Things had to be done. That impacted public finances. The war in Ukraine, of course, that's impacted public finances. But places like this, where I am now, can they, hand on heart, say that they have noticed the difference or the benefit to voting Tory in big numbers like they did at the last election? Liam Halligan joins us now with On the Money.
Good to be with you, Patrick.
Over to you, Liam.
Well, Patrick, you are, of course, in Ashfield. That's in Nottinghamshire. There are 38 Tory seats across the East Midlands out of the 46 parliamentary constituencies. Many of those seats, like Ashfield, where you are, were won in 2019 when Boris Johnson was Prime Minister, as well as Nottinghamshire, which includes Ashfield. The East Midlands also includes Derbyshire, Leicestershire, Lincolnshire and Northamptonshire. This is a key part of the Red Wall. And I think it's true to say that over recent years, East Midlands has really had very, very low government spending. If we can look at the spending on transport, on energy, on digital, flood protection, on education, the East Midlands, it gets around 12% below the UK national average of government spending, which really is a reason for gripe and concern among a lot of those people. And in fact, the East Midlands per head, Patrick, receives the lowest public spending of all the UK regions, which is a pretty stark statistic. Having said that, the government has been trying to do something about that with its levelling up funding. Labour say that the levelling up funding has been dispersed deliberately to try and win back seats that the Tories already hold in the Red Wall. The East Midlands did secure most of the levelling up funding in the latest round in January 2023. But the regions missed out on the electrification of the Midlands main line. Most trains in the region, they're still diesel trains, which means they're less frequent, they're slower, they're more overcrowded. And also, Patrick, crucially, a big blow to Ashfield and the constituency you're now in is that the eastern leg of HS2, the superfast train, was also scrapped. So HS2 only now goes from London to Birmingham and then maybe from Birmingham to Manchester, but the Birmingham to Leeds bit, which would have included the East Midlands, has been scrapped and no one knows where that is going to return. So you are absolutely in the epicentre of where this next general election, expected in the autumn of 2024, will be won and lost in seats like Lee's seat, which of course was previously held by GB News' own Gloria De Piero.
Yes. It was indeed, Liam. You're absolutely bang on the money there, obviously. I'm going to be talking to Gloria shortly. Just walk with me if that's all right, because I want to give a little bit of a flavour about where we are at the minute. Cheers, Liam, by the way. So this obviously is Sutton in Ashfield. This is the High Street. We're going to be doing a lot of the show here today and indeed from the town square there. But it is real high streets like this, kind of normal places that a lot of people, frankly, ignore, I think. And it's all very well and good, Rishi Sunak, you know, pandering to the people of Surrey. No disrespect to the people of Surrey, of course. Pandering to people in Muswell Hill and areas like that. But this is really the kind of place that he needs to be winning, if indeed he is going to win that general election. These people lent Sunak their vote. And what have they seen? Have they had any bang for their buck? I wanted to know, courtesy of Jack Carson, who's been out and about talking to people, whether or not they are going to vote for the Conservative Party at the next general election. Is it going to be Tory or Labour for the people of Ashfield?
Labour or Tory?
Labour.
Why? What about them attracts you to them?
Well, I think they do more than Tories. I've never voted Tory, I've always been Labour.
Is there anything that Rishi Sunak could do to persuade you to vote Conservative?
Never. I will never ever vote Conservative or Liberal. Just Labour. But I can't vote for anybody because I ain't got a photo ID, but I would if I had photo ID.
Definitely Conservative. I've always been Conservative. Nothing really has swayed me. I know that there's been a lot of problems, but I think they're going to get it sorted. Keir Starmer is not the sort of person that I think should lead the country, to be fair. I don't believe in his values.
Labour's been a big letdown. They just seem to want to take money off people that work and give it to them that don't want to work. And I don't agree with that either.
I think if we keep Conservative in, then it means having a Conservative Party leader here, which to me, he has done nothing as a PM for Ashfield. So it's one of them things where everybody's thinking, I would have thought, who shall we vote for? Because nobody seems to do anything.
OK, yes, so what you've heard there is a bit of a mixed bag, isn't it, really? All to play for, I think. The big question is going to be whether or not people feel let down. A little bit later on in the show, I'm zooming in, I'm zoning in on some core issues that I think, well, I don't think, I know, because I've been speaking to people, really matter here. Immigration being one, OK, illegal immigration as well. Law and order, I'm going to be discussing the fact that the local police station is closed as well. I'm also going to be talking about, crucially, the cost of living crisis. And I just want to give you a little bit of a flavour of an individual I'm going to be talking to, the other side of the news. This is the leader of the council. Your name, please?
Jason Zadrosny.
I got him to pronounce his surname. There you are. So we're going to be having a chat really about how things are going here. Just quickly, because we're going to have a longer conversation in a moment or two. But you are an independent.
Absolutely. Ashfield's entirely independent. At the elections this May, 32 out of 35 councillors were independent. That's a gain from last time when we won control. And even at the general election, the independents are in second place here.
And this is why this place, like when I went to Boston in Lincolnshire on Net Migration Day, this is why this place is such a good case study, because of stories like this. Why is it independent? Why have people not got their allegiances? Why did people vote Tory at the last election, but now they feel politically homeless? Does that sound familiar? I suspect that it does, actually. And frankly, it's probably a bit like a place near you, isn't it? And when we come back, what's the main, just one second, what's the main issue for you that you hear on the doorstep here? What do people care about?
Well, particularly cost of living right now.
Yeah.
They want to feel safe and they want a good quality of life. So the government or the government in waiting have got to challenge that as the #1 issue.
So cost of living is the big thing. Look, when I come back off the other side of the news, I'm going to be playing you clips from me having a chat to people about, frankly, what they care about most and what would make them want to vote Conservative at the next general election as well. A lot of people are saying to me that despite the fact that the demographics here are majority white, that this is an area that I think it's fair to have not been drastically touched by high levels of net migration. Net migration is a huge issue from people here. Why do you think that is?
I think that's because of the cost of living. People are struggling more, they're struggling to get homes, they're struggling to get decent access to education or services, and if they see other people getting that easier, then of course that's who they look at as the problem. I think the problem's the government, but people need to know that those issues are tackled, and at the moment they see net migration as sucking out the economy, and that's why they think they're struggling.
Yeah, no, indeed. OK, all right. Well, look, we're going to be drilling down. We're going to be drilling down into the reasons why this cost of living crisis is happening in places like here. So, look, make sure that you email in gbviews@gbnews.com. Get in touch. Let us know your thoughts. And also you can pitch areas. I'm going to be talking to Gloria De Piero shortly, of course, former MP for this area, now of GB News' parish. I'm going to be talking to her about, what she knows of this area and the issues. And again, I want to emphasise that this is a absolutely perfect microcosm of the Red Wall and where the key battlegrounds for the next election will be won and lost. So make sure that you stay tuned because I've got absolutely loads coming your way. gbviews@gbnews.com. I'm Patrick Christys. This is GB News. I'm going to be back very shortly after your headlines.
Good afternoon. It's 3:30. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. 4 children, including a British national and an adult, have been injured in a knife attack in the French Alps. It's understood the knifeman's a Syrian man with refugee status in Sweden. He entered France legally and wasn't previously known to security agencies. The 31-year-old carried out the attack in a playground in the Alpine town of Annecy. Police say he's been arrested, that he was shot in the legs and has since been taken to hospital. This is what we know about the 5 victims so far. 4 are children, all aged between 22 months and 3 years. 2 of the toddlers and the adult are in a life-threatening condition. The Foreign Secretary has confirmed one of the injured toddlers is a British national. Witnesses say at least one of the children was in a pram at the time of the attack. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and the French President have both condemned the attack as cowardly. Ukraine's military claims flooding in the Kherson region after the destruction of the Kakhovka Dam is forcing Russian troops to retreat by up to 15 kilometres. President Volodymyr Zelensky has been visiting the area where hundreds of thousands of people have been left stranded and without drinking water. There's concern the water level at a reservoir near the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is running dangerously low. Smoke from hundreds of Canadian wildfires has cast a huge smog over the skies of Washington, D.C., where Rishi Sunak currently is, and New York City. More than a dozen US states were under air quality alerts yesterday, with officials urging residents to stay indoors. 1 million masks are being handed out today at transportation hubs throughout New York, including Grand Central Terminal. And you can get more on all of those stories by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2520 and €1.1629. The price of gold is £1,571.88 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 7,597 points.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
This is Ashfield, and this is GB News' Red Wall Special. Throughout the course of this show, I'm going to be talking to real people about real issues. We are popping that Westminster bubble, people, because it's areas like this where general elections are actually won and lost. A few key areas for me to cover today, OK, which is immigration, illegal immigration, the cost of living crisis, law and order. Really care about cancel culture. I've been talking to people on the ground here. I'm going to play you some clips of that very shortly. But I'm going to go live now to Gloria De Piero, who is the former MP for this area from 2010 to 2019, did not stand here at the last general election, of course, now very much and very gratefully of this parish. Gloria, great stuff. Thank you very much. This seat is fascinating, I must say, absolutely fascinating, because I'm walking around here and really it should be. Really, by the traditional definition of Labour, it should be. But it's not. And I'm not sure it shows any signs of going back there. What does Keir Starmer have to do to win this seat back at the next general election? Because if he wins here, he'll win in the red.
Well, Patrick, if I can start by saying what the Labour Party did do in the last, 6 or 7 years, it offered Jeremy Corbyn to people of Ashfield as a Prime Minister. They had absolutely no truck with that. And then after 2017, it tried to overturn the Brexit referendum, where 70% of people in Ashfield voted to leave the European Union. I argue very strongly that result should be respected, but we went down this madness of a second referendum. So the people of Ashfield and many other people in the Red Wall, they were disrespected. And that election was gifted to them. It is no wonder that they turned their backs on the Labour Party. Now, Brexit is done. Corbyn has gone. Keir Starmer's a bit boring, but he's not scary. So I can go into more detail about what more he needs to do, but he has some things in his favour by the fact that Brexit is done and Corbyn is no longer leader.
Yeah, those are going to be absolutely monumental issues. I mean, I think there's the fundamental lack of Jeremy Corbyn, really, is playing rather well here. Lee Anderson, of course, is the current MP. He is very popular. I'm going to be talking to Lee in a little bit. I've also been talking to business owners, etc., about what their main issues are, really. But do you think that Rishi Sunak can resonate here as well? Or do you think he just doesn't quite get it? Because with the best will in the world, this area is not necessarily where, a fabulously wealthy southerner would do that well.
Well, wages are below not just the national average in Ashfield, but the regional average too. I still go up there a lot, Patrick, because it's my happy place. I learn an awful lot from the people of Ashfield. What my sense is that people who used to vote Labour, who then switched to Boris Johnson, in the main, some are returning to Labour, but they don't really like either of them. They don't really like Rishi Sunak, and they're not really sure about Keir Starmer. So I think actually nothing is in the bag. I don't believe those opinion polls at all showing 140-seat majority for Labour. That's fancy. I think it's a battle for the biggest party. And Labour needs to continue to tackle their negatives. And I'll tell you what makes that a little bit more challenging. It's because at that last election, so many people like me, I didn't stand, but so many Red Wall Labour MPs went, that actually the parliamentary party is quite big city-ish. And those voices from the Red Wall that are so important to renewing the mission, well, so many of them lost their seats. Now, I know for a fact that the Labour Party focus group the hell out of the Red Wall. I mean, nothing will get past, a policy will not go through without it being tested in the Red Wall. They are focused on it, but I think the party still feels a bit too London, a bit too city, a bit too metropolitan, and they've got to work on that.
Yeah, look, 100%, 100%. I'm just going to bring in an individual now who's just joining me. We'll allow you to introduce yourself, sir.
Hi, I'm Chris Huskinson.
Okay, and your role?
I'm an executive lead for leisure and health and wellbeing.
Leisure, health and wellbeing.
Yes.
Okay, and you are an independent?
Yes, I'm an Ashfield independent.
Now, again, this is part of the reason why it's so fascinating here, okay? Because realistically, this, as I've said, it should really be Labour. I mean, it has traditionally been Labour. Then it went to...
I disagree with that.
We'll talk about that in a second. Then it went to Lee Anderson, of course, and the Conservative Party, and now it's the independents who are in control. Do you see Labour winning the Red Wall back?
No.
Why not?
They're very out of touch. When I talk to people on the street and, door knocking, etc., people are tired of party politics. People, I think, have lost their faith in Tory, Labour, and they want an independent person that's like them, that grew up in their area, went to their school, shops on these streets, just like I do, that lives the same kind of life as they do.
Yeah, I mean, that may well be a way of it going. It is a very different kettle of fish, though, on election day, when people actually find themselves in that polling booth on their own, with the curtains drawn, as it were, and then they quite often they just tick a box that they've always ticked, don't they? Which is unfortunate, but well done for you, obviously, for the local side of it. Now, time and time again, I'm going to play some Vox Pops shortly anyway of people I've been talking to here. Time and time again, issues are coming up here, which is, immigration, which is remarkable, really, considering this is, I mean, looking around, you can quite clearly see it's not an area that you would say has been massively hit by huge levels of net migration in the way that, for example, Bradford has been, or Rochdale in Manchester, for example. Why do you think people care so much about that here?
For me personally, I don't think there is an immigration problem locally. There's no asylum seekers in Ashfield, as far as I'm aware, etc.
People want Rishi Sunak to do something about what's going on in the Channel, don't they? That's the thing.
Yeah, but I'm not a national politician. I'm a local politician. So what happens in London is not really on my radar.
Let's localise it, okay? Let's localise it, because levelling up was a massive factor in the Conservative government, okay? That was really what they said they were going to do. It was a flagship policy. They said they were going to level up. Have you seen any levelling up?
Oh yes, we've won 72 million pounds in this area that we're going to be spending locally.
Tell me where you're going to spend it.
Well, I can't spend it right here. I mean across Ashfield. I'm not talking about. I'm not talking about right here on the sundial. I'm talking about across the entire district.
Okay.
We've just built a £15.5 million leisure centre, which was handed over to me last week.
Yeah.
Which was built basically from.
So you are now the proud owner of a leisure centre.
Yes, I took hold of a brand new swimming pool this morning in Hucknall, which is an additional swimming pool, which is a 15-metre swimming pool that's for young children and things like that. So the independents are doing absolutely fine without the Labour or the Conservatives.
I do get that. With respect, do you think you'd have got that money if it wasn't for Lee Anderson?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah?
100%. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just wondering, because obviously, I mean, it would make sense as the deputy chair of the Conservative Party, who's the sitting MP, for them to lob a load of money at him and go, we are levelling up, and then you don't think that's got anything to do with it?
No, nothing.
Really?
Nothing whatsoever. Absolutely zero.
What is it?
Our executive lead for creating new, new business, Matt Ralph is the reason why this area got the £72 million.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know his official title. I'm ever so sorry, Matt.
I know, so I'm sure he'll forgive you. Okay, so to be fair, then, when it comes to election day, whenever that may be.
Yep.
Areas like this, like the one we're in now, in the Red Wall, that need to be able to say, they need to be able to reach out and touch something and go, I can physically, in my hand, hold the benefit of the Tory government. To be fair, whether or not it's to do with the Independent, you are saying that you have had levelling up here. You have.
Yes, but not in this exact town, not in this right thing.
Here, now.
It will do. Yeah, there are plans.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? That is interesting, because in about a year's time, whenever that happens, then clearly that's going to be a massive thing. Gloria, I'm going to bring you back in. Gloria De Piero, former MP for this area, and now, very gladly, as far as I'm concerned anyway, of our parish at GB News. Yeah, Gloria, it's interesting that, isn't it? Because as long as people can actually reach out and touch something that they can say, well, I voted Tory last time and we have got a new leisure centre, then I suppose, that could do well at the next election.
Patrick, that high street looks exactly the same as the high street that I represented up until December 2019. There is zero change to that high street. So they really need to get cracking, because we're going to be voting within a year. So there is a practical limit to how much you can transform a community. They really needed to crack on as soon as, you needed to get the shovel in the ground like a couple of years ago if they want to reap the benefits of levelling up. And there's other questions as well. I mean, they've got 13 years of a record now, the Tories. 13 years is quite a long time. And if I were Labour leader, which thank goodness I'm not, I'm your colleague instead, I would just focus on, do you feel better off than you did 13 years ago? Is your NHS better than it was 13 years ago? Actually, on immigration, have the government dealt with immigration? Have they dealt with illegal immigration? And I think the government record is actually not that great. Do I think it's in the bag for Labour? Absolutely not. But I do not think the Tories are standing on a great record.
No, absolutely. Look, Gloria, thank you very, very much. I think I'm going to be talking to you a little bit later on as well. And I must say, you are very popular here in Ashfield. I've been talking to people, they always ask me, where's Gloria? So there you go. I have to say that she's back. I can't actually see where you are, but you're somewhere else, unfortunately. Turn down the opportunity to go to Ashfield with me today, Gloria, but I'll forgive you. But look, thank you very much. Gloria De Piero there, of course. Right, stay tuned, because, as you can hear, it's all kicking off. But this is our Red Wall special. It's areas like this in Sutton, in Ashfield, that really matter. I'm going to be drilling down on the key issues that affect people here. We've got immigration. It's the cost of living crisis. Has levelling up worked as well? So we're going to be talking about all of that. GB Views at gbnews.com. I will be back in a tick. Don't move.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
Is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, The People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, The People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Hello and welcome to GB News' Red Walls special from Sutton in Ashfield. Now, as you can see, I am with the top cop in the area. The reason being is that in the next hour, I'm going to be talking a lot about law and order. There was a local police station just a couple of minutes away. That's now shut. And remarkably, a story broke yesterday. I did it on the show yesterday, didn't I? About the fact that apparently in half of England, no burglaries have been solved for the last 3 years, which I find hard to believe, but apparently that is something. Anyway, we're going to be talking about law and order in this area, what it means to people. It's a key issue on the doorstep. But another big issue has been immigration, illegal immigration, what's going on in the Channel. And that, I think, was absolutely driven home by what we are seeing happen in France today. I was going to say it's shocking. Sadly, it's not that much of a shock, is it? Mark White joins me now, our Home and Security Editor. Mark, I'm going to let you talk us through it, really. I mean, this is an absolutely disgusting incident that's taken place.
Yeah, this was an event that unfolded at 9:45 in the morning, local time, in the town of Annecy in the French Alps, a beautiful tourist town where a man went on the rampage armed with a knife and targeted very young children, the youngest being just 22 months old, in a playground in the town of Annecy. Local people who were in that park running away for safety, but of course these little toddlers who were in that play park at the time had nowhere to run. Now this man, after it stabbed him, he was caught on camera fleeing the scene, and he was followed by some very brave, it has to be said, members of the public who stayed with him, shadowing him until the police could apprehend him. And the police tell us that actually within 4 minutes of the first calls reporting this mass stabbing underway, they had arrested this suspect. Now, in terms of the suspect and what we know, we're told that he's 31 years of age, that he arrived in Sweden some 10 years ago as an asylum seeker from Syria. He was apparently granted asylum in Syria in April of this year. At that point, or near that point, he separated from his wife, a Swedish national, and moved to France. He's been in, we believe, this area of France for some time. The authorities say that he is of no fixed address, and he was seen in and around this park on a number of occasions in recent days, just sitting on a park bench. We can see images now, and I'll describe them for our listeners on radio, of this man wearing a head covering, sunglasses, and carrying a knife in his right hand, that knife that was used to stab the young and the vulnerable. As I say, very young children, 4 of them stabbed and we're told severely injured. 2 adults were also stabbed, according to authorities. One of those adults, a 78-year-old man, was severely injured as well. The very seriously injured were flown to local area hospitals. One was actually flown to neighbouring Switzerland, to Geneva, for immediate medical care in that country, just because they had a major casualty unit just 30 miles over the border there that the helicopters could get to quickly. So the motivation for this horrific attack is still underway, Patrick. The motivation is still not known, as the investigation, I should say, is still underway. The counter-terrorism prosecutors are not involved in this investigation at this stage. And as I say, whatever the motivation was for this individual, he hasn't yet shared that with authorities.
Now, Mark, thank you very much, in a way. Mark White there, our Home and Security Editor. I have obviously seen the video that we are not showing, for good reason to you all. Absolutely disgusting attack. There's, sadly, I think it hammers home the urgent need for us to get control of our laws and our borders, etc., because it's a public health and safety issue, is it not? I want to just remind people, reportedly, Syrian refugee goes on the rampage with a knife in a children's playground in France. We do not want that happening here. Now, I am just going to bring in Lee Anderson here, in case you're wondering where I am. I'm in Sutton in Ashfield. This is the Red Wall, right? This is the beating heart of the Red Wall. You are Mr. Red Wall, really, yes. Lee, aren't you now? You've gone from Labour to the Tories. You're Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party, which is fantastic. I mean, why did you make the switch? Because it wasn't just you, it was loads of people in your constituency as well. My concern, Lee, would be, well, not really a concern, but is that whether or not Labour have lost the working class.
Yes, it's not just me, Patrick. In 2019, probably 5 to 6 million people voted Conservative for the very first time. We had Brexit, we had Boris, we had Jeremy Corbyn. They were 3 main ingredients. But, you know, places like Ashfield and Mansfield next door and Bolsover have been going Tory for some years now, probably 10, 15 years. The tide's changing, the pits have gone, the factories have gone, the big massive unions have gone. You know, people have woke up a little bit, they're a little bit more nimble in their voting. And you can see, I think that they're basically better off. They've got more money in their pocket with the Conservative government. So I sort of popped that seal, if you like. I was that typical Red Wall voter, Labour councillor, Labour member. I made that journey, and lots of other people made that journey as well.
No, exactly. And this is something that we're going to be drilling down, you know, over the course of this show. I'm going to throw you over now to Paul Hawkins, who's our national reporter, who on this issue, talking about who's the party of the working class, talking about where people in areas like this are going to put the cross in the box at the next general election. Which party do they think is going to really stand up for them and their workers' rights, I suppose, really? Well, Paul's got a package for you now on exactly this.
I'm meeting Protect Dunsfold, a local group formed in 2019 to fight drilling by UKOG, that's UK Oil and Gas.
Talk us through, very simply, what are the 2 main legal challenges in this judicial review?
One of them is about the impact of the AMB. The area of outstanding national beauty at the moment finishes on the road down there under the bottom of Hascombe Hill, but there is a plan to extend it which will include the whole of Dunsfold, and one of the claims is they didn't take account of it properly.
The other reason is that on the same day the government said yes to drilling in Dunsfold, it said no to drilling in Ellesmere Port, citing emissions as a reason.
This is inconsistent decision making, which is something that's not allowed.
Together with Waverley Borough Council and backed by the Good Law Project, they're seeking a judicial review of the government's decision to allow exploratory drilling near Dunsfold.
It's been going on for some time, isn't it?
It's been going on for 4.5 years now, since February 2019. So we've managed to keep UKOG out of that field.
And this is where the drilling would happen. In this field, there'd be an access road built through this field with the sheep. It would run through here, and then this is where the drilling would take place. In the early 1980s, oil and gas deposits were thought to be beneath these hills, but it wasn't thought commercially viable to try and extract it. UK Oil and Gas think that's now changed. They reckon there could be up to 30 to 40 billion cubic feet of gas beneath our feet, worth £124 million. And they want to take 3 years exploring the ground beneath us to try and find it.
How do they justify such a small project as this being allowed to take place in this beautiful environment? Its output, by their own reckoning, is going to be very small in terms of barrels of oil or gas.
UKOG declined to comment on an ongoing legal case. So we spoke to UK Onshore Oil and Gas, who are the industry body.
In terms of energy density, the amount of energy you get per square kilometre from oil and gas is orders of magnitude greater than it would be from wind and solar.
Do you understand why they would fight this?
Look,
because if it was in your village, they were going to make these huge changes to the village, which there seemingly there would be, with extra traffic, you know, tearing up the landscape. Even if it's for a short period, which I know you claim.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's not a claim, it's a fact. Like, there have been 2,100 onshore oil and gas wells drilled in the UK. Okay, look around the country, you don't tend to see them. They're really well hidden. And once the resource has been depleted, the land is returned to its former use, typically agriculture. So it is a temporary use of the land. Exactly a year ago today, the government rejected a gas site in the north of England on climate change grounds. And
this is Ellesmere Port.
That's correct, and approved one in the south of England. It is absolutely up to government to explain that inconsistency, because we criticised it at the time. We said both sites should have been approved.
If you lose the judicial review, what happens next? You're not giving up?
No, the fight goes on, and we'd have to explore whatever paths were legally possible. It's not going to be an easy route for UKOG to follow, even if they win this appeal.
Residents of this quintessentially English village are determined to keep their part of the world forever green and pleasant. Paul Hawkins, GB News.
OK, so in the next hour, I'm going to be reporting live here from Sutton in Ashfield, the beating heart of the Red War. It's areas like this where general elections are won and lost. I've got my finger on the pulse, and I'm going to be talking to real people about what really matters to them. I will also have the latest on the absolutely staggeringly awful incident in France. A Syrian asylum seeker goes on the rampage with a knife in a children's playground. Stay tuned.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome to the Red Wall. It's Patrick Christys here on GB News in the beating heart of that red in Ashfield, and I'm going to be joined on and off throughout the course of this show with the deputy leader of the Conservative Party, Lee Anderson. This is where elections are won and lost, OK? Really, it should be Labour. It traditionally was Labour. Boris Johnson's Conservative Party won this place in big numbers at the last general election. I've come here to find out what issues matter to them. Rishi Sunak might have his top 5 priorities. Are they your priorities? That's what I want to know. Frankly, it is places like this that really, really matter. So I'm going to be talking to a load of people on immigration, on the cost of living crisis, on law and order, frankly, on absolutely everything. I am, of course, also going to be keeping you bang up to date with the very latest disturbing news coming out of France. Reportedly, anyway, a Syrian refugee going on the rampage with a knife in a children's playground. Surely now more than ever. Now more than ever, we have to start controlling our borders. I'm going straight in now with our Home and Security Editor, Mark White. And as I understand it, Mark, deeply disturbing scenes. Children, babies, essentially, toddlers attacked in their prams. No known motive at the moment. They're saying that the terror police aren't involved, the latest that I heard. But one Brit, sadly, has been hurt.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely horrific events that unfolded in the tourist town of Annecy, which is in the French Alps. It was 9:45 this morning when a man entered a children's play park armed with a knife and began stabbing very young children. Now, when I say very young, we're talking 22 months old was the youngest of these children. You can see, for those watching on GB News TV, the suspect there wearing a head covering, sunglasses, still carrying that knife in his right hand, leaving that play park. And what's all the more disturbing about this particular incident is, of course, the fact that he targeted young children, but the fact that this play area is behind a wall and through a fence and through a gate means that this individual had to actively enter that area to seek them out, to target them. So they're not just random people within a park that he has come across and stabbed. He has gone into that play area full of the most vulnerable people, the very young, and targeted them. That man was then chased, as we can see from this other video, by two members of the public, very brave individuals who, knowing that he was still armed with a knife, kept a few metres back but followed him. They used their backpacks really as a sort of makeshift shield should he turn round and stab them. And, you know, they have every reason to be cautious, because two other adults who were in this play area who confronted the man as he began attacking these children were themselves attacked, including, we're told, a 78-year-old pensioner who was critically injured and has been airlifted to hospital. Also, very alarmingly, from the French Prime Minister confirming that all four of the children were severely injured. We had earlier been told that two of the children were critically injured and two of them more lightly injured, but we're actually told that since then, four of the children were or have been severely injured. No further updates on their condition at this stage, Patrick. In terms of what we know about the suspect, we know that he is a refugee. He was an asylum seeker, had travelled from Syria through Turkey and into Sweden some 10 years ago, had asked for asylum, and that was finally granted in April of this year. He'd married a Swedish woman, but apparently they'd separated in recent months. She'd stayed in Sweden. He has a young child, we're told, of his own, a 3-year-old girl, but yet, according to the authorities, he chose to go to this play park in the middle of a tourist town in the Alpine region of France and specifically target children the same age as his own child.
Yeah, lost for words, Mark, lost for words. Look, thank you very much for keeping us up to date. I will be going back to Mark White as we get more updates. It's a fast-moving picture, this. That is the latest as a Syrian refugee goes on the rampage with a knife at a children's playground in France, which is sadly not as shocking as it probably should be, unfortunately. But on this, OK, I am in Ashfield at the moment, like I keep banging on about. It is the beating heart of the Red Wall. This is a vital area when it comes to winning the next general election for Rishi Sunak, winning it back, if indeed you are Keir Starmer. I was out and about, talking to people about what really matters to them in this area, and I spoke to some people about shock. Here's what they had to say.
Dragging financially the country down the hole. Okay. Yeah. Welfare state, dependency, welfare state, we're going to run out of money very, very quickly. We cannot continue in the way that we're doing, giving money to people coming to this country illegally. It's hard enough giving it to the people that need welfare state help, never mind people that shouldn't be here.
Rishi Sunak says that he's winning in his Stop the Boats campaign. I can see you rolling your eyes there. Do you feel like he's winning?
Absolutely not. I think he's failing. I don't think we should give the French any money. The French don't want them in France. Nobody else wants them, which is why they help them to get across the channel. Yeah. Financially, it would drag them down, and they'd rather drag us down financially than drag themselves down. It's just, that's unfortunate circumstances, but that's what it is.
You voted Tory the last election?
Absolutely. I voted for Mr Anderson, our local MP. Personally, I would stop them putting foot on English soil. And as soon as they come across and they're here and they're collected and they're dropped on, then the entitlement begins, doesn't it? And the Home Office give them a card and they're entitled to whatever it is, £175 a week or whatever they get, more than a pensioner in a lot of cases. There's no point in paying the French any money. They're just taking it off us for... I can't honestly see that they make an effort to stop them, because they don't want them there.
OK, right, so welcome back. I am in Ashfield at the moment, and that's what some people, business owners, ordinary members of the public, were saying. Fascinating, isn't it, that when they are asked the question directly, would you vote for a man who turns the boats back, the answer was a resounding yes. In fact, they probably double the vote, which says it all. Can I just show you something here, which I think is fascinating? We've obviously got the union flags here. We've got to show you the Armed Forces Covenant, OK? So we're on the High Street here in Sutton, Ashfield. It's supposed to mean that former military personnel, so veterans, get priority housing and priority mental health care. Well, it certainly looks like here that's taking place. I mean, they're quite proud about it, aren't they? But I know for a fact that in loads of places in the United Kingdom that's not happening. In light of what we've been talking about, what's been going on the channel, this is really, I think, an issue that plays incredibly badly with people on the ground in places like Ashfield. I'm going to bring it now. Teresa. Teresa, how are you, Teresa?
I'm very well, thank you.
Now, Teresa is, you're an ordinary member of the public, aren't you? You are a local-ish resident, is that right?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Yes, I shouldn't have said ordinary, really. Of course, you are spectacular.
I thought you were going to say elderly then.
Absolutely not. Never in a million years. No, I've not got a death wish, OK? All right, so there we go. I want to clear that up. Now, why does immigration matter to you, illegal immigration? Why are you so bothered about it? Because with respect, I look around here and I mean, it doesn't really seem necessarily like net migration is having a huge impact. So why does it bother you?
Because I think the way they took away all the documents and everything to identify and what are they hiding, I think half of them are bloody criminals, if not all of them. Mafia, everything, slave traffickers, you name it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think we should turn the bloody boats back instead of escorting them. What the hell is
would you vote for? They're not all criminals, of course, but I think that was pretty obvious.
Well,
I do, don't say again. In terms of, would you vote for a man who turned the boats back?
Definitely, 100%.
OK. Do you want him to?
Yes.
Right.
Because this country is full that we can't look after our own. Like you said, ex-forces personnel, some of them with life-changing injuries, some of them are on the streets begging. What the hell is that all about? Why should we put them buggers up in
OK, all right, OK. Apologies for the language. Sorry. But clearly that is the strength of feeling that we are seeing on the ground here in Ashfield. Thank you very much, Teresa. It's a fascinating situation. Now, I'm going to bring in Lee Anderson here, who's the Deputy Leader of the Tory party. I'm not sure frequents this particular nail salon, Lee, but there we go. Look, OK, just apologies again for the language there, but it is you know, a hot topic here in Ashfield. This is something that people time and time again are telling me they want sorting out, and they would be willing for Rishi Sunak to be stronger about it.
People are frustrated, Patrick. You know, I won't shy away from this subject. Said from day one, we should be pushing back. We should be returning the same day. I think, to be fair to Rishi, though, he was dealt a bad hand. The legislation we brought in last year, the Nationality and Borders Bill, was not strong enough. He's actually given us what we wanted, which is new legislation, which basically detains any illegal immigrants and removes them to a third country or their own country. We need to do that as soon as possible, but it winds these people up in Ashfield. We're landlocked here, and it really winds them up.
No, it does. And I actually cannot emphasise to you the strength of the genuine strength of feeling on the ground here. I mean, I'm going to be playing you clips later on throughout the course of the show, but seriously, I'm asking people, just going up to them and just saying to them, what's the main issue for you? What's the main issue for you at the moment on the streets? And frankly, net migration is a big one, really. If Rishi Sunak wants to win the next general election, does he have to start turning the boats back, Lee?
Well, that would be my priority, to sort the small boat issue out, Patrick. You know that. We've got to have a situation. We've got the Rwanda plan working, and we've got to have a situation where the migrants who I visited, as you know, in Cali just a few months back, they stop coming because they think or know that as soon as they get here, they'll be on a plane to Rwanda or to a third country. Okay. Simple as that.
OK, all right. Now, we're going to be hearing a lot about the issues that matter to people in Ashfield and places like Ashfield. There's the cost of living crisis. That is having a very real impact on people. I'm going to be talking to business owners, some of whom have already told me that they are massively struggling, really, frankly, and that they don't necessarily always feel that their taxpayers' money is going in the right direction. But I'm also going to be having a chat as well about a huge other issue here, which is the lack of law and order, supposed lack of law and order. A police station just down the road closed down. It's a sorry sight when it comes to a lot of areas like this, where you very rarely tend to see a bobby on the beat. What is happening in law and order when it comes to places like this? It's Patrick Christys at GBNews. I'll be back in a tick with our Red Wall special.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Welcome to the Red Wall. This is GB News. Sutton in Ashfield, the home, of course, of Lee Anderson, the now Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party, former Labour, now a Tory, and frankly, that is the story of this seat. I have come here to get my finger on the pulse and see what people really care about, what the views are that matter to them, because it is areas like this in the Red Wall that are going to swing that next election. If Keir Starmer can't win these back, then frankly, he's not getting the keys to Downing Street. If Rishi Sunak can't win them, well, he's not either, is he? So it's a bit of a hot mess. Now, we went out and about earlier on and we asked people what the key issues were for them personally. Forget about Sunak's top 5 priorities, forget about whatever the heck Keir Starmer's doing. What actually matters to real people in Ashfield? So Rishi Sunak's got his top 5 priorities. What's your priority?
My priority is, if I want to go to the toilet, there's none round. Right. I've got to go into a business shop or the bookmakers. Yeah. And if you're allowed to do it without having a bet, I can't just walk in.
Okay.
So what do I do if I want to go to the toilet?
Well, yeah.
Or relieve myself with it that way?
Yeah.
I think my most important thing is
I think it's really hard work for my children with children, that they have to go back to work. I know the child doesn't know, but I think it's heartfelt, and there's just so much connection that's lost. When they have to work full-time, within an hour, that child then has to go to bed, when they've got babies and children.
Childcare?
I think childcare needs addressing.
What matters most to you?
To me, top of the list is definitely the cost of living, because we all know, we all sit here and government saying this and they're saying that, and supermarkets saying this and that, and we know the manufacturers down to the supermarkets are profiteering to the max, and it's us people here who are sitting here ever so quiet because we daren't say anything, but we know we're being robbed blind.
Well, there we go. I mean, it's not a shock, is it, really? These are the real issues that people really care about. I've got to be honest with you. I mean, should our political leaders not just be coming to places like this and talking to ordinary people just to ask them, what do you think and what would make you vote for me, and then maybe do that, but call me a dreamer. Anyway, somebody who has actually won a vote or two in her time is Rachel Madden, who, you're an independent. I'll let you introduce your own brief. OK, so you're on the local council, yes?
I am, and I'm lead executive member for finance and benefits.
For finance and benefits. Now, that, I suspect, is probably more difficult than it's been in the past. I mean, we keep hearing, don't we, we're in this cost of living crisis. People, a lot of the time, in London or maybe in the home counties, which a lot of people think, by the way, is the only place that exists in England, but so there we go, maybe don't feel it as much. I know some people do, but not necessarily everybody. You've got a massive gap in Surrey. It's quite lovely, isn't it? How are the people of Ashfield faring?
Better than we anticipated. Given the cost of living crisis, as you say, everything's gone up exponentially. Whether it's fuel, food, energy, anything has gone up. We've been lucky in Ashfield. We've got a very proactive group that go after funds that is necessary. We need these funding coming in to help us with the cost of living crisis around here by providing extra stuff from large leisure centre down to safer streets.
But this is really interesting, actually, because a lot of people talk, don't they, about levelling up and whether or not we have been levelled up. Areas like this. This is an area where the Conservatives were lent a vote by the general public and the population, and they have to do something with it. Now, you're an independent. What I think is interesting is that you're saying they have levelled up.
We have managed to level up in Ashfield because we've been successful in getting funds from all sorts, millions down to six-figure sums here to help out. We're lucky that we've got a proactive group within the council hoping to help the residents out in this area. But it would be nice if top-level politicians would come down and talk to us sometimes. We've got so much uncertainty in the future because of the government are not doing the reviews of various policies, or they're not coming forward with the finances we need.
Yeah. Do you think that Keir Starmer has done enough to win back places like this?
No.
Why not?
He seems to be turning into a pink Tory.
OK, interesting. Go on.
Yeah. We've got a really strong working class ethic in this district around here.
Yeah.
You can see that from the background of our councillors that have recently
And your MP, to be fair.
And et cetera, et cetera. I think mainstream politics has died in this area. We've had independents here for quite a while who have shown that they can manage to produce the goods. How have we managed to produce the goods? By common sense, perhaps, being pragmatic.
I mean, that's lacking, isn't it? I mean, every single day I do a show and I'm confronted by common sense issues, and I pull my own hair out at some of the decisions that are made, and I just think, good grief, come on. I mean, it would be common sense. Independents can provide that. You're saying that you don't think that Keir Starmer does. In terms of Rishi Sunak, is there anything that you've seen from him that you could say has benefited this area or the Tory party by virtue of them lending the Tories their vote at the last election?
Rishi Sunak himself, no. As I say, we have managed to get the levelling up funding into the area.
That's big.
Which
70 million quid.
Big. Yes, from the state-of-the-art leisure centre, town's funds around here, as you heard earlier.
With respect, what more do you want?
We could do with a lot more. We have a high level of elderly in the area, so we want to produce the well-educated workforce of the future to stay in the district.
Are you seeing more people on benefits than you were, let's say, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago?
About the same, slightly less.
So we've weathered really the cost of living crisis in a way.
Yeah, yes, through the help with the council directing the monies, etc., in the right direction. Yes.
Okay, well, there you go. Now, this is fascinating. Thank you. I'd like to talk to you a little bit later on. It all hinges on whether or not people are going to continue to vote for the Conservative Party, whether or not they're going to vote Labour, whether they're going to vote for somebody else. So we went out and about and asked people who they are going to vote for in here, the key beating heart of the Red Wall at the next election. Here's what they said.
Labour or Tory?
Labour.
Why? What about them attracts you to them?
Well, I think they do more than Tories. I've never voted Tory, I've always been Labour.
Is there anything that Rishi Sunak could do to persuade you to vote Conservative?
Never. I will never ever vote Conservative or Liberal. Just Labour. But I can't vote for anybody because I ain't got a photo ID, but I would if I had photo ID.
Definitely Conservative. I've always been Conservative. Nothing really has swayed me. I know that there's been a lot of problems, but I think they're going to get it sorted. Keir Starmer is not the sort of person that I think should lead the country, to be fair. I don't believe in his values.
Labour's been a big letdown. They just seem to want to take money off people that work and give it to them that don't want to work. And I don't agree with that either.
I think if we keep Conservative in, then it means having a Conservative Party leader here, which to me, he has done nothing as a PM for Ashfield. So it's one of them things where everybody's thinking, I would have thought, who shall we vote for? Because nobody seems to do anything.
OK, so here I am in Sutton in Ashfield. This is absolutely the Red Wall. This is the epitome of the Red Wall. And I am with, frankly, Mr. Red Wall as well, who is here, Miss, here it would appear, Lee Anderson, who's joining me now, the Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party. You can't win them all, Lee. Right, when it comes to people voting intentions at the next general election, right, are you confident that your party has done enough to maintain people's votes?
I think it has. I mean, like I said before, Patrick, at the last election we had Corbyn who was toxic on the doorstep for the Labour Party. I'm speaking to people now who may be a little bit grumpy with us over the immigration status at the moment, but there's no love for Starmer. You know, they're saying to me, get your act together and we'll vote for you again. That's a message I'm getting in not just Ashfield, but across the Red Wall. OK, now what is a topic that I'm going to be doing the other side of the news is about the culture wars, because it is a criticism of the Conservative Party that, as important as it is, and anyone who watches this show regularly will know how important I think it is for women to have their own spaces, for example, for this ridiculous trans ideology to not infiltrate our schools any more than it has done, and frankly for the lack of cancellations to take place. We've seen what's happened to J.K. Rowling, etc. But would people not rather have more hospitals, better public transport, clamp down on what's going on in the Channel, more housing built, than the Conservative Party zoning in on the culture wars? I did, however, go out and about and speak to people about whether or not they could bring themselves to vote for someone who thinks that a woman can actually have a penis in the shape of... I'm going to bring Lee back in now. The culture wars is something we're going to be talking about when we come back. Why do you think it's so important? Because, like I've just said there, some people would say it's more important to build a new hospital and build more houses than it is to define what a woman is. Well, of course it's important to build hospitals and schools, Patrick, but the culture wars, this is something that was started by the left. of the country. This is something which people like me fight back on a daily basis. There is a certain element in our society that are ashamed of our history, our culture, our past, all the things we've done in the past. I'm incredibly proud. I'll say this on many, many occasions. This great country of ours is a gift to the world, and we should love our country, we should love our king, love our flag, every one of those things, and celebrate our history and our past and our culture, rather than keep having to go and blaming us for all the nasty things that's happened in the world. All the great things on this planet started in this country.
And there shouldn't be much shame, I suppose, from your perspective, of being proudly patriotic. Thing that shines through in this area. I mean, just before we were there, we could see Union Jacks around us there, and things about the armed forces, etc. And I suppose standing up for British tradition and British culture, because that's the criticism, isn't it? Oh, we haven't really got any culture that's worth protecting. And I think some of those people might want to be careful what they wish for, because you'll miss it when it's gone.
Look, you know, folks in Ashfield, there are some people in Ashfield who don't have much, but what they do have is a bit of pride. They're proud that they're English, proud that they're British, proud of our country, proud of our flag, like I say, and proud of the heritage and culture that comes with it. We're an island. We've always punched above our weight on this planet. And even in a place like Ashfield now, where, like I say, people's not got a deal in their pocket, they are incredibly proud to be British, and we should never forget that.
Do you think that people en masse could bring themselves to vote for a man who takes the knee?
No. I mean, I don't know why I did it, Patrick, to be honest. I mean, taking the knee was, for me, it was supporting a political movement, BLM. We know what they're all about.
It is, I mean, they've got a manifesto.
Defunding the police, getting rid of the, you know, doing all these sorts of nasty, horrible things. I think that was a sign of weakness, not a sign of strength, what he did then. And I think, you know, people around here, when they see that, when they see politicians taking the knee, they won't forget that at the ballot box.
OK, all right, well, hold that thought. When I come back, I am going to be zoning in on the culture wars. Because, look, these are places, frankly, pretty people, right? They don't really think that a woman can have a penis. They don't really agree with what's been going on in our schools in terms of the kind of woke ideology. They're no-nonsense individuals. And you know what? People down south might not like this, but this is most people. So I'm going to be zoning in on that after your headlines.
Thanks, Patrick. It's 4:31. I'm Ray Addison in the GB newsroom. And our top story this hour: 4 children, including a British national and 2 adults, have been injured in a knife attack in the French Alps. It's understood that the knifeman is a Syrian national who has refugee status in Sweden. He entered France legally and wasn't previously known to security agencies. Now, shocking footage has emerged online of the 31-year-old carrying out the attack in a playground in the Alpine town of Annecy. Police say that he was shot in the legs whilst being arrested and has since been taken to hospital. We go now live to the White House, where I believe the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has arrived for his meeting with Joe Biden. Well, Rishi Sunak will be having talks, of course, with the President, US President Joe Biden, later on today in the Oval Office. A number of topics on the agenda, including AI security as well, and, of course, trade with the UK. OK, well, to continue with our bulletin, of course, French former football player Anthony Letalec was at the scene of that attack in France and described what he saw. OK, we don't have that clip available just yet. We have that clip now.
I saw the guy who, indeed, is coming in front of me. He's on the grass. The cops are right behind, about 5 or 10 metres behind him, and who can't catch up with him. So I move out of the way a little, and I see him going straight towards men and women, and he attacks. He attacks the old guy. He stabs him once. The cops are behind him, can't catch up with him. And I tell the cops, just shoot him, kill him, he's stabbing everybody. So he attacks once, twice, and then they start shooting. So they shoot in front of me.
Well, this is what we know about the 5 victims. 4 are children, all aged between 22 months and 3 years old. 2 of the toddlers and 1 of the adults are in a life-threatening condition. The Foreign Secretary has confirmed that 1 of the injured toddlers is a British national. Witnesses say at least 1 victim was in a pram at the time of the attack. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and the French President have both condemned the attacker as cowardly. Well, Ukraine's military claims that flooding in the Kherson region after the destruction of the Kakhovka Dam is forcing Russian troops to retreat by up to 15 kilometres. President Volodymyr Zelensky has been visiting the area where hundreds of thousands of people have been left stranded and without drinking water. Now, there's concern that the water level at a reservoir near the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant is running dangerously low. Smoke from hundreds of Canadian wildfires has cast a huge smog over the skies of Washington, D.C. and New York City. More than a dozen US states were under air quality alerts yesterday, with officials urging residents to stay indoors. 1 million masks are being handed out today at transportation hubs throughout New York, including Grand Central Terminal. Well, you can get more on all of those stories by visiting our website, gbnews.com. Lots of stories on there, including all the latest on the trial between Prince Harry and, of course, the Mirror newspaper news group. Now let's get back to Patrick.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know,
All
Kate
sorts of
Moss?
women. Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It is Sutton in Ashfield. I'm Patrick Christys for GB News. We're keeping our finger on the pulse here, OK? These are towns and areas that Keir Starmer is going to have to win if he wants to win the next general election. Rishi Sunak is going to have to make sure he doesn't lose if he wants to win the next. In the next hour, I'm going to be talking about law and order. I'm going to be talking about immigration, especially, by the way, in light of those devastating situations that's happened in France, where a Syrian refugee has gone on the rampage with a knife in a children's playground. We're going to be bringing you up to date with all of that. But yes, I'm going to be talking about immigration. I'm going to be talking about law and order. I'm going to be talking about the cost of living. But right now, I'm going to be having a discussion in areas like this, in the Red Wall. How do they feel about things like the culture wars? Because the Conservative Party have put a lot of stock in this. Now, I kind of recline a little bit from the phrase culture wars, because some of it I don't really see as being that much of a war. Some of it I see as pretty bleeding obvious, like, for example, a woman can't have a penis. I mean, that would be something that I think most people on the ground here would just agree with. I actually went out and about and asked people whether or not they think that the Conservatives are winning the culture wars, what elements of it matter to them, whether or not they could vote for someone who can't tell you.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, because have a sex change, can't they?
Yeah? Would you vote for someone who can't tell you what a woman is?
No.
Why?
Why?
Well, do you think that trans women are women, or are they men?
They're women.
They're women.
They're women. When they was born, they know what they wanted to be. They know that society is society, and you're born, and sometimes you're born, you can be born as a woman, you can be born as a man, but your body's telling you different.
Okay.
And it's like, I've had experience. My dad's a male, but when he was younger, in his younger age, he was a transvestite, got beat up all the time in Sutton in Ashfield. But no one's got a right to judge you for what you think you should be and what you want to be. Nobody.
Of course you can, because he's a transvestite.
Yeah.
No, not you know what I mean, yeah. Yeah, of course you can. I don't like it much, but not my choice, but yeah, of course you can. A woman can have what she wants. It's her choice.
Would you vote for someone who can't tell you what a woman is?
No, I don't think I will, actually. No.
Can a woman have a penis?
I wouldn't have thought so.
No?
No.
Yeah, there we go. One of the more bizarre questions I've asked ordinary members of the public, but it's worthwhile noting, I think, isn't it? Because this is really the point that I'm trying to make, which is that I think we're in a common sense neighbourhood around here for the most part, and actually whether or not some of the strange, weird ideology that appears to be infiltrating our civil service, and dare I say it, some elements within Downing Street as well, actually plays well on the ground here. Here's a common sense individual. It's Lee Anderson, who is the MP for this area, of course, and is the deputy chairman of the Conservative Party. The culture wars, Lee, we spoke a little bit about it earlier on. I mean, I'm not convinced, clearly, that people are going to vote for someone who can't tell you what a woman is, like Keir Starmer.
Yeah. Well, it may come as some surprise, Patrick, to some people in the Labour Party that men have penises and women have, I want to say this word live on TV, have vaginas. It's as simple as that. When I was born, the midwife said to my dad, "Congratulations, Mr. Anderson, you have a baby boy." She did not say, "Congratulations, Mr. Anderson, we don't know what you've got, come back in 18 years' time."
Let it define itself.
People in Ashfield are not stupid, and they get sick to death. Politician can't answer a simple question.
Yeah.
Well, I'll answer it now. Can a woman have a penis? Can a biological woman have a penis? The answer is no.
No. And why does it matter, though, Lee? This is the thing, OK? Because what a lot of people do, your usual types on Twitter, what they'll say is that the Conservatives are using the culture wars and issues like this as a way of distracting from the fact that our country's knackered.
No, it's not us using the culture wars, Patrick. The culture wars are stoked and started by the left. It's not people on the right or Conservatives that go around ripping statues down. It's not people on the left that go changing the names of local pubs, taking the black after the Black Bull or something like that. It's not us that's doing that. It's the left, it's the lunatics on the left that's doing that. And we're saying, hold on a minute, we're British, we love this country, we love our culture, we love our history. Stop doing it, it's nonsense.
You know, one thing that is shining through, and I'm going to be playing you loads of clips from just speaking to ordinary people. By the way, no one said no to me today. I mean, it is fantastic. I very rarely get that, certainly around the Paddington area. But people are just really open and welcoming and want to talk, and they've all got a view. And I think what shines through for me is that common sense element, really. And you know, I've got to ask you, do you feel as though Rishi Sunak or a lot of the kind of how should I phrase this? More London-centric politicians know what real people think.
Well, let's be honest, Patrick. You know, as a local MP, it's not all about Rishi. It's not representative, being the eyes and ears of the Prime Minister. I think I do a pretty good job at that. You've spoken to people around here today. Most of the people passing know who I am. Not everybody supports me. A lot of them do support me. They say that I speak their language. I speak the language of GB News as well. So coming election time, it's up for me to make sure that the thoughts and the voice of the people of Ashfield are in number 10. And so far, so good, I think.
No, indeed. And when it comes down to the culture wars and when it comes down to basic things about, you know, women being able to have safe spaces, etc., I can't help but feel as though the Labour Party appears to have lost the ground on that. And this would appear to me, anyway, to be a really good area where the Conservatives could make gains. And just by actually upholding women's rights, which is a pretty easy way of doing it.
Well, it's shocking that the women's rights in this country are being eroded by the day. You know, we've seen it on some of your programmes recently on GB News, Patrick. You know, we have to protect women in this country. I said this last night on GB News, and you know, we talk about safe spaces for women. Goodness sake, why are we having to talk about safe spaces for women in this century? It's unbelievable. And you know, I've said before that some of the political lunatics have taken over the asylum. They certainly have in the Labour Party. Like I said before, they can't define what a man is and what a woman is. And you know, my mother, she's nearly 80, bless her, and she says to me, "I've had 3 kids. I'm all woman." Simple as that.
Exactly. And do you think on that, we talk a lot, don't we, about an ageing population? I know that a lot of the young people who voted Remain were actually very open, discussing the way they were going, oh, well, you know, everyone who voted for Brexit was old and they'll all be dead soon and we shouldn't listen to them. I mean, excuse me, thank you very much. These people have paid into the tax system their entire lives. They worked their entire lives. Plenty of them probably fought in the flipping war, for goodness sake. I mean, you know, they deserve our respect, don't they, really? Whether or not we're letting them down somewhat with all of this ridiculous kind of woke ideology, that would be my concern now with the Conservative Party. The culture wars. You know what's been going on in the civil service, and when it comes to them, I mean, apparently the Home Office civil servants supposedly actively looking to take the government to court. Rishi's but you guys are in charge. You've got to sort it.
Yeah, we are in charge. It's very difficult when you've got, for example, say Suella, Home Secretary. She's in charge of about 35,000 civil servants. So, you know, we know there's a lot of problems within that civil service. They're slow at some of the work they're doing, especially with the immigration, the asylum claims. But you're quite right. I mean, when I go and see my parents and people in my home village, they talk about this culture stuff, this woke stuff. They're absolutely roll their eyes, Patrick. They shake their head and they say, Lee, my goodness, what's this world coming to? And we talk on a daily basis. Let's talk about the real things that affect real people, and that's money in the pockets.
Okay. Thank you very, very much. Right, Lee Anderson's going to be joining me on and off. I think we'll get a bit of a flavour of the area. I'm going to be talking to local business owners in the next hour. I'm also going to be doing a police and crime special. You can actually see a police van over there, which is very on brand, isn't it, at the moment, and a police officer behind the scenes there. Because, like a lot of areas, I think people feel as though that they maybe don't see enough police officers, although, yes, I want to emphasise, of course, that there are some there now. It came hot off the press that it emerged yesterday that in half of Britain, a burglary hasn't been solved for the last 3 years. So let that sink in. It means that if you decide, I mean, don't do this, but if you decided now to come break into your neighbour's house, in parts of Britain, there is a 99.9% chance that you'd get away with it, which is absolute lunacy, isn't it? Hello, how are you?
Good.
Yeah, very well, thank you. I'm doing the news. I'll see you in a minute. Anyway, make sure that you stay tuned. gbviews@gbnews.com. And when I come back, in fact, I've got a little package for you now. And this is fascinating. Yes, this is a little fascinating for you now, which is going to be about whether or not people in the Red Wall would vote for Labour or the Tories at the next general election. Let's play it.
Labour or Tory?
Labour.
Why? What about them attracts you to them?
Well, I think they do more than Tories. I've never voted Tory, I've always been Labour.
Is there anything that Rishi Sunak could do to persuade you to vote Conservative?
Never. I will never ever vote Conservative or Liberal. Just Labour. But I can't vote for anybody because I ain't got a photo ID, but I would if I had photo ID.
Definitely Conservative. I've always been Conservative. Nothing really has swayed me. I know that there's been a lot of problems, but I think they're going to get it sorted. Keir Starmer is not the sort of person that I think should lead the country, to be fair. I don't believe in his values.
Labour's been a big letdown. They just seem to want to take money off people that work and give it to them that don't want to work. And I don't agree with that either.
I think if we keep Conservative in, then it means having a Conservative Party leader here, which to me, he has done nothing as a PM for Ashfield. So it's one of them things where everybody's thinking, I would have thought, who shall we vote for? Because nobody seems to do anything.
OK, all right. So I actually caught up a little bit earlier on with the former MP for this area, Gloria De Piero, who is now very gratefully of this parish. This is what she had to say.
Well, Patrick, if I can start by saying what the Labour Party did do in the last, 6 or 7 years, it offered Jeremy Corbyn to people of Ashfield as a Prime Minister. They had absolutely no truck with that. And then after 2017, it tried to overturn the Brexit referendum, where 70% of people in Ashfield voted to leave the European Union. I argue very strongly that the result should be respected, but we went down this madness of a second referendum. So the people of Ashfield and many other people in the Red Wall, they were disrespected. And that election was gifted to them. It is no wonder that they turned their backs on the Labour Party. Now, Brexit is done. Corbyn has gone. Keir Starmer's a bit boring, but he's not scary. So I can go into more detail about what more he needs to do, but, he has some things in his favour by the fact that Brexit is done and Corbyn is no longer leader.
Yeah, those are going to be absolutely monumental issues. I mean, I think there's the fundamental lack of Jeremy Corbyn, really, is playing rather well here. Lee Anderson, of course, is the current MP. He is very popular. I'm going to be talking to Lee in a little bit. I've also been talking to business owners, etc., about what their main issues are, really. But do you think that Rishi Sunak can resonate here as well? Or do you think he just doesn't quite get it? Because with the best will in the world, this area is not necessarily where, a fabulously wealthy southerner would do that well.
Well, wages are below not just the national average in Ashfield, but the regional average too. I still go up there a lot, Patrick, because it's my happy place. I learn an awful lot from the people of Ashfield. What my sense is that people who used to vote Labour, who then switched to Boris Johnson, in the main, some are returning to Labour, but they don't really like either of them. They don't really like Rishi Sunak, and they're not really sure about Keir Starmer. So I think actually nothing is in the bag. I don't believe those opinion polls at all showing 140-seat majority for Labour. That's fancy. I think it's a battle for the biggest party. And Labour needs to continue to tackle their negatives. And I'll tell you what makes that a little bit more challenging. It's because at that last election, so many people like me, I didn't stand, but so many Red Wall Labour MPs went, that actually the parliamentary party is quite big city-ish. And those voices from the Red Wall that are so important to renewing the mission, well, so many of them lost their seats. Now, I know for a fact that the Labour Party focus grouped the hell out of the Red Wall. I mean, nothing will get past, a policy will not go through without it being tested in the red wall. They are focused on it, but I think the party still feels a bit too London, a bit too city, a bit too metropolitan, and they've got to work on that.
The whole point of coming to places like this is to speak to real people. It's to get out and about and actually find out what real voters outside of that Westminster bubble actually think. And that is why, Daniel, get yourself over here, my good man. I've just collared this chap in the street, OK? But this is exactly the kind of thing, frankly, that I think a lot of our politicians could do with knowing about. The big issue facing you, OK, right now, what grinds your gears? You are a red wall voter. What do you care about?
There's so many issues, and because being a conspiracy nutcase, I think
this is going to go well.
They all roll into one.
Right.
I think the grand plan is to bring down the West, so we accept the new world order. People who love liberty and freedom.
What would Rishi Sunak have to do to get you to vote for him?
He'd have to resign, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
OK.
I mean,
would you vote Labour?
Not currently, no.
Right. OK. Now this is interesting because this really, on paper, by the traditional definition, should be Labour, and it isn't now anymore. A bit like Lee Anderson, actually, really. I mean, he was Labour, and now he's a Tory, OK? So you're obviously not a fan of Rishi Sunak.
No.
Doesn't sound like you're a fan
I
of
always give him
Labour
a chance,
either.
you know.
You were saying to me that immigration is a big issue for you.
Yeah, it is, yeah. I think, I mean, it's not just that, but I think immigration is one of the cards that they have in their hand. They've got to look like they're doing something about it. And especially at election time, they've come out all conservative and right-wing, like Rishi's talking about protecting free speech all of a sudden.
Yeah.
But as soon as election time's over, they go back to being the soft socialist, left-wing. I mean, Lee Anderson's only bloody right-wing, sorry for swearing, MP. And I'll stick up for Lee, but people think because he's my MP, I'll stick up for him.
I have genuinely literally just dragged this man off the street, by the way. This isn't a setup, so there you go. But look, thank you very, very much. It's great to meet you and great to chat to you. And take care. All right, I'll see you in a little bit. So look, this is just a flavour of what's going on the ground. When we come back, we are going to be talking about people, whether or not they think that net migration is too high, whether or not they think that illegal immigration is too high as well. That is a big issue in the red wall. And of course, I will be giving you the very latest on those devastating incidents that have taken place in France, where a Syrian on the loose with a knife in a children's playground. One Brit has been injured, several children in a very serious condition. Patrick Christys on GB News. This, of course, is our Red Wall special.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing. We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Well, a very good evening, everybody. It's 5 o'clock. It's Patrick Christys. It's GB News. And as you can see, I am in Sutton in Ashfield. This is our Red Wall special. It all matters here, OK? This is where general elections are won and lost. And frankly, it doesn't get enough coverage. It's exactly where GB News ought to be. There's a police van behind me. No, I'm not about to get nicked, hopefully anyway. I am going to be focusing in on law and order, though, because a lot of places, especially in the north of England, believe it or not, have not seen a single burglary solved in the last 3 years. That's mental, OK? So I want to talk about that, law and order in areas like this and whether or not people want to see more. We're also going to be talking about immigration, illegal immigration. I'm going to be talking to local councillors. I'm going to be talking to ordinary people on the streets. I'm going to be really getting to grips with the Red Wall. And I will be joined as well by Lee Anderson, the Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party. This is Patrick Christys, and this is GB News' Red Wall special. Well, I am going to whiz you over, I believe, stateside now, though, quickly, where Rishi Sunak is meeting President Biden. I believe we can have a little look and listen to that.
Well, Mr. President, I just demoted you, Mr. Prime Minister. It's great to have you back. And, the past few months we've met each other in San Diego, and then we met in Belfast, and we met in Hiroshima, and now we're here. We're going to solve.
Okay, fine, great. What am I doing off the back of this?
20 minutes, but Prime Minister Churchill and Roosevelt met here a little over 70 years ago, and they asserted that the strength of the partnership between Great Britain and the United States was the strength of the free world. I still think there's truth to that assertion, and together, we're providing economic, humanitarian aid and security assistance to Ukraine in their fight against the brutal invasion of the Russians. And we've worked out an arrangement with AUKUS, with Australia, to make the Indian Ocean and the whole area safer and more secure. And we've built on the Good Friday Agreement, 25 years. We can talk about that a little bit. As NATO allies, we're working together to help provide the collective defense of all of us, and we're going to further. I hope we're going to discuss today plans to further strengthen our economic relationship. And the global economy is undergoing, I think, the greatest transformation that's occurred since the Industrial Revolution. And something you know a lot about, AI, is going to play a big part in that. I want to hear your views on that as well. And we don't have a closer ally than Great Britain, and we're delighted you're here. Well,
Mr. President, thank you. Thank you for the warm words, but also thank you for welcoming me to the White House and for allowing me to stay in Blair House, which I've got to say, the spare room in the flat in number 10 Downing Street doesn't quite compare. So it's been a real privilege. And as you said, it's daunting to think of the conversations that our predecessors had in this room when they had to speak of wars that they fought together, peace won together, an incredible change in the lives of our citizens. And again, for the first time in over half a century, we face a war on the European continent. And as we've done before, the US and the UK have stood together to support Ukraine and stand up for the values of democracy and freedom and make sure that they prevail, as I know we will. But also, I completely agree with what you said. Our economies are seeing perhaps the biggest transformation since the Industrial Revolution, as new technologies provide incredible opportunities, but also give our adversaries more tools for harm. But one thing I know won't change, I'm confident won't change, is the strength of our partnership, our friendship, and we will put our values front and centre, as we've always done, to deliver for the British and American people.
If we had time, I'd take you over to the residence where I live. And when you were over at Blair House, President Truman was there because they were redoing the White House. He put a hole in the Truman balcony as it exists now because of Blair House being built. That second balcony you see, the first balcony you see going up. So at any rate, and there's an awful lot of stories that are told, probably a bunch apocryphal about the former Prime Minister liking to take baths up that, anyway.
Wandering around at 3 in the morning, yeah, Winston Churchill, bothering Mrs. Roosevelt, yes. So you won't, don't worry, you won't see me there bothering you and the First Lady.
Anyway, welcome,
right.
welcome.
Well, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me, Joe.
Good to be here. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, so that was Rishi Sunak and President Biden. I mean, another day, another Joe Biden gaffe, isn't it? Does anyone just think seriously he's getting a little bit ridiculous with Biden? I mean, he didn't stumble over, but he did stumble over his words, I believe, there, and introduced Rishi Sunak as Mr. President, which... I mean, hey, at least he's in the room. Right, we are going to be talking to Mark White now, our Home and Security Editor. And we're going to be talking about a devastating incident that's taken place in France. Bear in mind, where I am now in the Red Wall, immigration is playing a massive part here. This is the word on people's lips, mainly the illegal side of things, it must be said. But what we've just seen happen in France, and Mark is going to fill us in on this, is a Syrian refugee going on the rampage with a knife in a playground in France. Mark, what's the latest, please?
Well, we still don't know what the motive for this horrifying attack was at this stage, but it unfolded at 10:15 in the morning local time in the Alpine resort of Annecy, just a beautiful town full of tourists, including tourists from the Netherlands, from the UK, who we know were caught up in these horrifying events. This suspect entered a child's playground and began stabbing, singling out the most young and vulnerable victims there. The youngest victim was just 22 months old in a stroller, who he had gone back to attack a number of times, actually caught on video attacking this youngster. We'll not show you those images because they are just too graphic. What you're seeing now for those on GB News television are the shots of him in the park, having fled the playground, being pursued by a couple of brave, it has to be said, members of the public who only have, in the way of protection, a couple of backpacks to offer them scant protection, really, from the knife that he's still holding in his right hand, the knife that he used within this playground here to such devastating effect. We know 6 people have been stabbed, 4 of them very young children, and sadly, according to authorities in France, all of the children are severely injured. We saw the medical services along with the police arriving on scene very quickly indeed. In fact, he was apprehended within 4 minutes of the first emergency calls being made to the police. And as far as the victims are concerned, well, they were airlifted to area hospitals, and also one of the victims was airlifted across the Swiss border to a trauma centre in Geneva, just utilising whatever trauma centres were ready and available to receive these injured. The motivation, as I say, Patrick, is still unknown at this stage. We do know, according to authorities, that this man was an asylum seeker who'd come from Syria, had settled in Sweden, and then after 10 years was granted asylum in April of this year. He was married, apparently, to a Swedish woman. They separated earlier this year. He made his way to France. And we're also told that he has a 3-year-old daughter. The victims that he chose to target in this attack were of a similar age.
It's just absolutely devastating, this particular incident. Mark, thank you very much. We'll be going back to Mark White as and when we get any more developments. Mark White, there, our Home and Security editor. Look, that is clearly a massive problem that's taking place in France. We have seen something similar take place here in this country, haven't we, where an aspiring Royal Marine was stabbed to death on the streets of Bournemouth over an e-scooter, by a chap who'd made his way here illegally, had, according to reports anyway, been responsible for a double murder abroad, drug dealing abroad. He was allowed into schools here. We treated him as a child and we opened our arms and our doors to him, and then that happens. And so, realistically, what's just happened in France, as devastating as it is, and the fact that kids are involved, I mean, good grief, the mind boggles, doesn't it? But is it any real surprise? Seriously. I mean, this is kind of what happens if you don't have tight border security, is it not? And on that note, I am here in Ashfield, in the heart of the Red Wall, the kind of area where elections are actually won and lost. Shortly, I'm going to be talking to Lee Anderson, who is the Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party, former Labour, now a Tory. I mean, very on brand for this area, isn't it, in general? But I was asking them what they make of our current immigration crisis. Let's hear what they had to say.
Dragging financially the country down the hole. Okay. Yeah, welfare state, dependency, welfare state, it's, we're going to run out of money very, very quickly. We cannot continue in the way that we're doing, giving money to people coming to this country illegally. It's hard enough giving it to the people that need welfare state help, never mind people that shouldn't be here.
Rishi Sunak says that he's winning in his Stop the Boats campaign. I can see you rolling your eyes there. Do you feel like he's winning?
Absolutely not. I think he's failing. I don't think we should give the French any money. The French don't want them in France. Nobody else wants them, which is why they help them to get across the channel. Yeah. Financially, it would drag them down, and they'd rather drag us down financially than drag themselves down. It's just, that's unfortunate circumstances, but that's what it is.
You voted Tory at the last election?
Absolutely. I voted for Mr Anderson, our local MP. Personally, I would stop them putting foot on English soil. And as soon as they come across and they're here and they're collected and they're dropped on, then the entitlement begins, doesn't it? And the Home Office give them a card and they're entitled to whatever it is, £175 a week or whatever they get, more than a pensioner in a lot of cases. There's no point in paying the French any money. They're just taking it off us for... I can't honestly see that they make an effort to stop them, because they don't want them there.
OK, so I am here in Ashfield. I'm in the town square. We've been kind of roving around a little bit. And I'm going to bring Lee Anderson in now. Thank you very much, Lee. Now, Lee's been obviously very hospitable to us here, the Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party. What we've just been hearing there, Lee, is about how important an issue migration is, net migration and illegal migration is, to people in the Red Wall. It was a big Brexit backing area, the Red Wall, in general. they felt a bit let down. They thought it would mean that they would have tighter controls of their borders. We've just seen what's happened in France, for example, where a Syrian asylum seeker has stabbed a load of kids in a park, for goodness sake. We've got to do better, haven't we, if you want to keep hold of places like this? I mean, I know you care about it, but what are you saying to Rishi Sunak?
Well, we're saying a lot to Rishi Sunak and government. You know, migration, legal migration is far too high. We know that. It should be, I mean, it was 650,000, something ridiculous like that. Illegal migration, that winds people up even more, because at least with the legal stuff, they're coming here legally. But, you know, we have people in my constituency that do sometimes struggle to get a doctor's appointment, get a dental appointment. You know, they struggle to access public services, get the housing waiting list and stuff like that. So they're frustrated, they're angry, they're a little bit fed up.
Does this come up? So when you're out and about, like you have been today, meeting people, or when you do your surgeries or whatever you do people actually say to you, I used to be able to get a doctor's appointment, I can't anymore?
Well, I think what they do, Patrick, they put it in stronger language than that. It's not just necessarily...
Our friend Teresa from earlier.
Well, it's not just necessarily about doctor's appointment. It's about the strain on public services. It's about... You know, people are naturally conservative, I think, regardless of what part of the country you come from. They don't like quick change, and what they have seen is a lot of people coming in over a short period of time, and people just don't like that.
No, it's the fast-paced nature of it. Now, part of being out and about places like this is, frankly, to talk to real people, just ordinary people. And on that note, my good man, come on board. Right, OK, thank you very much. I will let you introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is John. I live in Ashfield.
OK.
So
brilliant. Now John was just walking past, so I thought I'd grab him and ruin his day. Now, John, we're talking a lot here now about the issues that matter to people in the Red Wall. A lot of the time, the Red Wall, in my view, is either ignored by the mainstream media or talked down to. So the platform is yours. What's the most important issue for you?
Immigration is one of the main ones for me. Right. There's some genuine immigrants coming in with, you know, but it's a lot. There's a lot of freeloaders coming in. They're just coming in to milk the system, and that's taking the money away from the people who really need it, who live in this country.
Now, this is, again, the reason why we're here is it's such a good case study, this area. I mean, the MP himself is a good case study because he was Labour and is now Tory, etc. So, can I ask, how did you vote at the last election?
I voted UKIP at the last election.
Okay.
But over the years, I voted virtually for every party that's going.
Yeah.
But political views tend to swing over the time, don't they?
I am aware. Just there and probably giving you daggers, but who are you going to vote for in the next election?
It'll either probably be Tory, but it depends how much they can get done. Possibly independent.
Oh, come on, here we go. Right, I'll tell you what. Look, go on, Lee. Sorry about this. I'm stitching you up a little bit here. But look, this is kind of direct democracy, okay? Here we are. This is, I keep banging on about it, but I'm banging on about it because it's true. Seats like this are where general elections are won and lost. What do you want?
Well, I think the independent councillors have done a great job in Ashfield, but obviously that's slightly different to the main political parties, isn't it? But, I mean, the roads are in a shocking state.
Yeah. Well, there you go. You see, you've answered your own question. The independent councillors are in charge of the roads. They're the county councillors and the district councillors. Our roads are in a shocking state. And picture this. If you get an independent MP at the next election, can he knock on Rishi's door or Suella's door and say, I want this for Ashfield, I want that? No, they can't. It just don't happen. Unfortunately for some people, you might think this, that to have any sort of voice in Parliament, you have to be a member of the governing party or the main opposition party. An independent candidate has no power whatsoever.
All right, no, I mean, it's a good answer, to be fair. When it comes, so roads, actually, has come up a few times. And this is interesting, so Rishi Sunak's got his big top 5 priorities, OK? You've identified immigration. This is a big one for you. Would you vote for a Prime Minister who turned the boats back?
Yes.
Even if there were consequences to that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why we can't just ignore the ECHR ruling where they say they're putting objections forward. Why do we're not in the EU anymore? Why have we got to take notice of what they're saying?
OK, now on that, where are you on the Labour side of the fence? Because it is areas like this that Labour obviously are trying to win back, right? And you could see if they got it right, It could be fertile ground for them. It's not at the moment, it's fair to say. Where are you in terms of Keir Starmer and the Labour Party?
I think they're unelectable at the moment.
Why?
Because, well, Keir Starmer is just Mr. Flip-Flop. He keeps changing his mind from one thing to another all the time. And I can't take them.
Okay. So if Rishi Sunak sorted the roads out and turned the boats back, you'd vote for him?
Well...
Anything else?
You've got to think of the whole wide range of spectrum of everything, haven't you? I mean, I'm slightly right of centre, I suppose my politics are. But to take Labour seriously again, they're going to have to do a lot of work, I think, with a lot of people.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. Look, thank you very much for your time. Great to meet you. All the best. All right, all the best. Take care. Right, so, yes, the police van is indeed here, actually, which is just as well because it's been kicking off a little bit over there. You're probably seeing it all behind me. But, very on brand, when I come back, I am going to be talking about law and order. We could do with a bit of it, actually. I'm going to be talking about law and order. There was a police station here. It's closed, although we are being quite well protected at the moment, which is great stuff. But up and down the country, people feel as though we are a soft touch. We've got police officers escorting Just Stop Oil as they ruin the working class's lives. But if you get broken into, there's every chance that they're going to get away with it. What on earth is going on in areas like this? Are you seeing enough law and order? Patrick Christys on GB News for our Red Wall special.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News. the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. The sun is shining on the red wall here. It is indeed Ashfield when we are joined now by the leader of Ashfield Council here. Come on in, OK. So go on, introduce yourself.
I'm Jason Zadrozny, leader of Ashfield District Council.
Good, yet again. No wonder I'm getting him to pronounce his own surname there, is it? But there we go. So I wanted to talk to you very appropriately about law and order, because this is a key issue in, not just in the Red Wall, actually, frankly, everywhere. Yesterday on my show, I was talking about the fact that apparently, remarkably, in basically half of Britain, they haven't solved a burglary for 3 years. Wow. Well, which is just mental, right? I mean, it's absolutely bonkers. I mean, I not that I have a particular inclination to break into somebody's home, but one of the things that stops me is the idea that I might get caught, but apparently that's not a thing anymore, so there we go. But here, we had a police station, it's shut. A familiar tale everywhere, isn't it?
Well, across Ashfield, we've lost in every one of our towns. We had big police stations, all been closed over the last 10 years. And of course, we're still down massively on police figures. So a big problem, not just about actually making people safe, but making them feel safe, which is a huge issue in this community. Yeah.
OK, all right. And do people feel safe? I mean, we can't get around the fact that the police van has rocked up. Some people are pointing ago the police turn up and that maybe this is my fault, and you might be right about that, but I mean there's a pretty fair police representation here now.
Look here, there's a police van here, but that is a district council van. Yeah. We are having to spend £1.3 million of district council funding propping up a job that the police should be doing. Now, I think the police are pretty good in Ashfield and across Nottinghamshire, but they haven't got the resources. The government haven't given them what they need to do, so we're having to spend additional taxpayers' money to do the job that they can't do.
This is interesting. Talk me through this then. So, I mean, we have a pretty good representation here, don't we? Police van, police officer, district council van. What's that? I mean, it looks like a police van, but the taxpayers are paying for the police and they're paying for this.
Well, yeah, we're doing extra work, so we've put up 50-odd CCTV cameras over the last 4 years. We pay for 10 wardens to bolster to go around our streets and parks and town centres. They deal with a lot of the antisocial behaviour, the domestic violence, the stuff that the police simply don't have the time to do. Otherwise, people wouldn't be in our town centres spending money. So it's vital we do that to drive the economy back up. OK,
so we talk a lot about levelling up. We talk a lot about the finances of it. Yeah, just walk me this way a little bit. So we talk about the finances of it. We've spoken about that. The cost of living crisis is very real, absolutely everywhere. And from what I can gather, yeah, it's had a big impact on people. People are struggling. But you wouldn't say necessarily more so than some other places in the UK. So it's about half the cost, from what I can gather, right? But levelling up would mean, providing more bobbies on the beat as well, for example. There's different ways to level up. So you would presumably want a tougher approach and more funding for law and order.
Well, I absolutely think that's right. I mean, firstly, when the government give the police spending powers, what they actually mean is put the council tax up, which puts more pressure on people. What we need is core funding for police officers. We're still not back at 2010 police officer figures. People want to see people on their streets so they feel safe. So core funding's got to be back. And I also think there's got to be more flexibility so the Police and Crime Commissioner can put funding up if she needs to as well.
OK, now this is interesting, because people, I think, really just deserve to feel safe on their streets, don't they? All too often now, people right across the country feel as though if their house gets broken into, if there's a petty crime, if there's a mugging, if their car gets nicked, that maybe it's not even worth reporting it because it might not get solved. We don't really want to live in a world like that, do we? I think. And every single area around here has seen a police station close. And this isn't a really fair representation of what I imagine it's like most of the time, to be fair. But the visible representation of having a bobby on the beat is something that I don't think can be beaten. I mean, there are studies out there that show that literally just having a bobby on the beat deters huge amount of crime. Although, to be fair, you wouldn't necessarily know if you looked around at the minute.
Well, look, this isn't crime. This is kids who are interested because you're here. But we do have crime and we have fear of crime, and we need people on the streets. But that's where the council stepped in here. The Independent said the police can come in and have a station back at our council office. We've bolstered by other things. But you've got to be creative, I think, this day and age. Ashfield has booked that trend a bit. But if you want people to be in our town centres spending their money, if you want people to go to the parks or go to the pub, they need to feel safe. And sadly, that's lacking, certainly across the region.
Yeah, no, it is. Look, thank you very much for your time today. I may well grab you again before the end of the show, but it's been enlightening. And actually, I'll just stay with me because this is fascinating. Like I said, this is our Red Wall special. It's a perfect little microcosm, this. When we did the net migration special, we picked a great place there, Boston in Lincolnshire, the place that voted more than anywhere in the country for Brexit, one of the apparently least well-integrated places in the country as well. Crime had gone up, huge levels of net migration. So we kind of absolutely hammered that home. But this is just the same when it comes to the Red Wall, really. I mean, you've even got an MP who was Labour, actually worked for Gloria De Piero for a while, who's now of our parish, who's now a Tory, as this area is. And this really is a vital place that Keir Starmer is going to have to try to win. We've covered a lot over the course of this show. We've covered immigration. We've covered a bit of the cost of living. We've covered law and order. We've also spoken about culture wars. When I come back, I am going to be talking a little bit as well about whether or not people are actually going to change their vote. But check this out. You are an independent, aren't you? Now, this is important because why are you seeing people voting not for Tories and not for the Labour Party as well? Why are independents so prominent?
Well, firstly, last 3 council elections, independents have won it in Ashfield, and at the last general election we're in second place here as well. And I think it's because we do things differently. It's not just Labour or the Tories' turn to win here. We work by changing the area, by representing it, by, we've put a lot of stuff into leisure, into crime, into changing the area, and people can see what a difference we've made. So you have to dig a moat round and make a difference.
All right, look, thank you very much. Look, we're just going to head over here now, really, because I just want to get a little bit of a flavour of the town centre for you there as well. And this is really what we're trying to drill down on today, which is the main reasons why people here are either going to vote Tory or vote Labour or, crucially, independent at the next general election. And that was a fascinating point, wasn't it? And we're painting a picture here of forgotten towns, really, in a sense, because areas like this are where general elections are really won and lost. It's not just your kind of blue wall or whatever they want to call it down south. It doesn't really matter so much about what happens in Scotland. I can hear some Scots shouting at their television screens now as I talk, but there we go. It's areas like this. It's this big belt that's really bang up for grabs in the middle of the country. And what I think should be a massive concern to both major political parties is the rise of the independent, is the rise of the protest vote. What is absolutely overwhelming here on all of the topics that we've spoken about, whether it's immigration, whether it's cost of living, or whether it's got to do with the culture wars, whether it's to do with absolutely anything, the absolute thing that's screaming out to me time and time again is political disillusionment. If somebody gets this right, they will win the next general election. I'll see you in a tick.
Thanks, Patrick. It's 5:30. I'm Ray Addison in the GB newsroom. Now, our top story, 4 children, including a British national and 2 adults, have been injured in a knife attack in the French Alps. Now, it's understood that the knifeman is a Syrian national who has refugee status in Sweden. He entered France legally and wasn't previously known to security agencies. Now, shocking footage has emerged online of the 31-year-old carrying out that attack in a playground in the alpine town of Annecy. Police say he was shot in the legs whilst being arrested and has since been taken to hospital. French former football player Anthony Le Tallec was on the scene and described what he saw.
I saw the guy who, indeed, is coming in front of me. He's on the grass. The cops are right behind, about 5 or 10 metres behind him, and who can't catch up with him. So I move out of the way a little, and I see him going straight towards men and women, and he attacks. He attacks the old guy. He stabs him once. The cops are behind him, can't catch up with him. And I tell the cops, just shoot him, kill him. He's stabbing everybody. So he attacks once, twice, and then they start shooting. So they shoot in front of me.
So this is what we know about the 5 victims. 4 are children, all aged between 22 months and 3 years old. 2 of the toddlers and 1 of the adults are in a life-threatening condition. The Foreign Secretary has confirmed that 1 of the injured toddlers is a British national. Witnesses say at least 1 victim was in a pram at the time of that attack. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and the French President have both condemned the attacker as cowardly. Well, President Biden has told Rishi Sunak that the special relationship between the UK and the US is in real good shape. That's during talks at the White House. Meeting in the Oval Office, Rishi Sunak mentioned the strength of that partnership and promised to continue to put our values front and centre. The two leaders also discussed how they've stood together in support of Ukraine and the potential dangers of new technologies.
We face a war on the European continent, and as we've done before, the US and the UK have stood together to support Ukraine and stand up for the values of democracy and freedom and make sure that they prevail, as I know we will. But also, I completely agree with what you said. Our economies are seeing perhaps the biggest transformation since the Industrial Revolution, as new technologies provide incredible opportunities, but also give our adversaries more tools for harm. But one thing I know won't change, I'm confident won't change, is the strength of our partnership, our friendship.
Well, you can get more on all of those stories by visiting our website, gbnews.com. We'll go back to Patrick in just a second.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
But first, a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2545 and €1.1638. The price of gold is £1,568.65 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's closed at 7,599 points.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News, investments that matter.
Behold, the red wall. OK, so welcome back, everybody. Patrick, Christys here for GB News. I must say, I absolutely love being out and about. It is great to connect with real people, but politics is not the only thing. Hello. Politics is not the only thing that's going on at the moment, because we've had another gaffe from Joe Biden. And Olivia Utley, our political reporter, joins us now. Olivia, yes, has he put his foot in it again?
Hello. Yes, I think we can safely say that Biden has put his foot in it. He's getting a bit of a reputation for gaffes, and I think, as you can hear, this one was pretty embarrassing.
OK.
Well, Mr. President, I just promoted you, Mr. Prime Minister.
Yes, it was quite interesting. Olivia, I believe that you might have some information about Boris Johnson as well. Is that correct? I mean, actually, it'd be great if you did, because I'm kind of in this swathe of seats now that Boris, of course, won with a stonky majority. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. Boris Johnson has had some news today. The committee that's looking into whether or not he misled Parliament over the Partygate issue has now given their draft report to Boris Johnson. He now has 2 weeks to make any response. He can introduce more witnesses if he likes, or he can quibble with some of the findings of that investigation. He has no legal recourse whatsoever, so he can't, there's nothing really material that he can do, but he can give more evidence to the committee. We are then expecting the committee to report back to the House of Commons in 2 or 3 weeks' time. And when they report back, they will explain their findings. They'll say whether they believe that Boris Johnson did or did not mislead the House of Commons. And this is the interesting bit, they will give a recommended punishment, if you like, whether that punishment is a 10-day suspension from the House of Commons or more, or whether it's a suspension of 10 days or less, is what really matters. Because, sorry, a little bit technical, but if it is 10 days or more, then that would trigger a by-election in Boris Johnson's constituency. So that would mean that Boris Johnson would have to really fight for his political career. Now, what hasn't really been picked up on, but I was speaking to a couple of Boris Johnson supporters now, is that when the committee gives its recommendation to the Commons, that decision will be amendable and it'll be subject to a vote. So potentially, Conservative MPs, Boris loyalists, Labourers who want to keep Boris Johnson in Parliament, if the committee recommends a suspension of more than 10 days, they could vote to downgrade that. Or conversely, if the committee votes on a suspension from the Commons which is less than 10 days, we could see Labour MPs voting to up that. So at the moment, Boris Johnson is desperately trying to curry some favour in the House of Commons, and we've seen him making some political interventions, standing up and speaking in the Commons, perhaps in an attempt to win over some supporters. But yes, finally, this investigation, which has lasted 14 months, is going to come to a crunch point in 2 to 3 weeks' time.
OK, look, Olivia, thank you very, very much for that. I am actually joined by Lee Anderson, who's the Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party. Lee, now I know that you won't have heard that. I'll just fill you in a little bit. There are some rumblings. Our political reporter Olivia Rutley was talking there about possibilities of Boris Johnson potentially being suspended from the House of Commons for 10 days, which would trigger a by-election. Your initial reaction to this, I mean, is this a bit of a witch hunt, do you think, or not?
Look,
Do you owe him your seat, really?
Patrick, yeah, I do, actually. Yeah. I do. I owe Boris a lot. Good all day today. Yeah. How many people today have said that Boris Johnson should go, or he should be suspended, or we should get rid of him? Nobody, because actually nobody's talking about it.
Actually, people don't care. You know, and, yeah, you're spot on. Yeah.
They don't care. So let's. It is a bit of a witch hunt, in my opinion. Just leave. I mean, he's been through a lot. Leave him alone, let him go on with his life, let him go on with his job, let him carry on being a great MP, let him carry on being a great member of the Conservative Party and crack on with the real issues that really matter, and that's places like Ashfield.
Yeah, places like Ashfield. Look, exactly, Lee, thank you very much. I'll be chatting to you again very, very shortly. I can speak now, or play you anyway, an interview that I did earlier on, actually, with Gloria De Piero, who used to be the MP here from 2010 to 2019, didn't stand in 2019, so there we go. Lee Anderson, of course, is the now MP, Gloria De Piero, a fan favourite at GB News. And one of the whole point to me being here is to talk about a variety of different issues. The cost of living is something that Gloria De Piero certainly feels very strongly and wanted to convey to me. This is an area, when we talk about levelling up, I mean, you can kind of get a flavour of it, really. It is, and I hope the people of Sussex and Ashfield don't mind me saying this, it's a normal high street, OK? This is very much a normal part of the world. A lot of high streets look exactly like this. You wouldn't necessarily know that this area had been given £70 million for levelling up. They've got a new leisure centre, they've got some new facilities as well, which is interesting because a lot of people need to be able to reach out and touch something to say, I voted Conservative at the last general election, if they did. Gloria De Piero just spoke to me generally, really, about the financial matters that will matter so much in constituencies like this in the Red Wall at the next election. Gloria.
Well, Patrick, if I can start by saying what the Labour Party did do in the last, 6 or 7 years, it offered Jeremy Corbyn to people of Ashfield as a Prime Minister. They had absolutely no truck with that. And then after 2017, it tried to overturn the Brexit referendum, where 70% of people in Ashfield voted to leave the European Union. I argue very strongly that the result should be respected, but we went down this madness of a second referendum. So the people of Ashfield and many other people in the Red Wall, they were disrespected. And that election was gifted to them. It is no wonder that they turned their backs on the Labour Party. Now, Brexit is done. Corbyn has gone. Keir Starmer's a bit boring, but he's not scary. So I can go into more detail about what more he needs to do, but, he has some things in his favour by the fact that Brexit is done and Corbyn is no longer leader.
Yeah, those are going to be absolutely monumental issues. I mean, I think there's the fundamental lack of Jeremy Corbyn, really, is playing rather well here. Lee Anderson, of course, is the current MP. He is very popular. I'm going to be talking to Lee in a little bit. I've also been talking to business owners, etc., about what their main issues are, really. But do you think that Rishi Sunak can resonate here as well? Or do you think he just doesn't quite get it? Because with the best will in the world, this area is not necessarily where, a fabulously wealthy southerner would do that well.
Well, wages are below not just the national average in Ashfield, but the regional average too. I still go up there a lot, Patrick, because it's my happy place. I learn an awful lot from the people of Ashfield. What my sense is that people who used to vote Labour, who then switched to Boris Johnson, in the main, some are returning to Labour, but they don't really like either of them. They don't really like Rishi Sunak, and they're not really sure about Keir Starmer. So I think actually nothing is in the bag. I don't believe those opinion polls at all showing 140-seat majority for Labour. That's fancy. I think it's a battle for the biggest party. And, you know, Labour needs to continue to tackle their negatives. And I'll tell you what makes that a little bit more challenging. It's because at that last election, so many people like me, I didn't stand, but so many red wall Labour MPs went, that actually the parliamentary party is quite big city-ish, and those voices from the red wall that are so important to renewing the mission, well, so many of them lost their seats. Now, I know for a fact that the Labour Party focus group the hell out of the red wall. I mean, nothing will get past, a policy will not go through without it being tested in the red wall. They are focused on it, but I think the party still feels a bit too London, a bit too city, a bit too metropolitan, and they've got to work on that.
This has been an absolutely fabulous day here in Ashfield. It is great to have your finger on the pulse, really, about what's going on in the country at the moment, and indeed what matters to people, what really matters to people. And it's quite refreshing, I think, to hear people talking about the issues that, frankly, I know a lot of GB News viewers and listeners care so much about. When I come back, I'm going to be talking to Lee Anderson, the deputy leader of the Conservative Party, former Labour, now a Tory, the man that epitomises the red wall, about whether or not he thinks that people in his seat here will go out and vote for the Tories again, because that's really what it's all about. Patrick Christys on GB News. Welcome to our Red Wall special.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Ah, yes. Well, welcome to the final throes of our Red Wall special. It's been a fabulous day here in Sutton in Ashfield, a perfect microcosm of what the Red Wall really means. This area should, and historically has been, Labour. Now, of course, it's Conservative under the MP Lee Anderson, who himself used to be Labour as well. I wanted to get to grips with what are the big issues on people's minds here, and what will it take for them to vote Conservative again at the next general election, or, of course, vote Labour, go back to voting Labour, whatever they want. One thing is absolutely shining through, and that is apathy. I am joined now by Lee Anderson here, and Lee, it looked a little bit like we were going to star in a Stormzy rap video for a second there, didn't it? But alas, no, we're not. So the big thing that's shining through here, apart from some of these young people, of course, is apathy, voter apathy, people feeling a little bit disillusioned. It's all to play for. It's all to play for at the next election, isn't it?
It is. I mean, apathy, if you're going to blame anybody for apathy, Patrick, it's got to be people like me and other politicians. You know, we're the ones to blame. If people don't go out to the ballot box, we've got to give people a reason to go out. Now, there's a reason that in 2016, more people than ever in Ashfield went to vote for the first time for the Brexit referendum. I was getting people calling me saying, how do I vote? These were people in the 50s, 60s and 70s, never voted before, but they went out and voted for Brexit in huge numbers. Now, if you give people a real reason to go out and vote, they will go out and vote, because they know their vote does make a difference. But like you say, apathy is creeping in all over the country.
Yeah, absolutely. And just walk with me a little bit here. I just want to make a quick apology. Apparently, if it was, come with me, Lee, if there was a bit of language or a gesture that you heard. But look, we're out and about, we're live, it's live tally, so that kind of stuff happens, doesn't it, really? But when it comes to giving people a reason to vote Conservatively, people are going to need that reason. What is it?
I think you've heard time and time again, to Patrick, that a lot of people in an area like Ashfield, which is a traditional working class area where people work hard for their money, they put the hours in, they put a real shift in 6 and 7 days a week, some people, and they get a little bit fed up of seeing people who's not working as hard as them, that may be living in a benefit culture that's getting a little bit more. Now, if we can get that right as a party, I think we're really trying to make sure that work really pays. And if you work hard, do the right thing, respect law and order, and you get on society, that's the message as a Conservative Party should be putting, or they are putting it out. And I think if we do that, we can tap into that working class vote again and win the next election.
OK, all right. And just on this, one thing that I will say has stood out massively to me, and I'd be very, very keen to get your views as well in the inbox, and I'll read all the emails on my rather long drive back down south to London, gbviews at gbnews.com. But something that really has stood out for me is the working class used to be the kind of preserve of the Labour Party. They were, and this is a really interesting place because it's got a big industrial community, right? But really, there is an argument, I think, that the Conservatives, if they play their cards right, can be the party of the working class in places like this.
Look, working class people have always been culturally conservative. You know, they respect law and order. They love Queen and country, King and country. They're aspirational. They want the kids to do well. They want the kids to go to a good school, even grammar schools. Working class people. These are conservative values, and they've always been conservative. But you know, because of the area we live in, they've always voted Labour. But that's changed. The big industry's gone. The closed shop unions have gone, and people are thinking more for themselves. They're more nimble at voting, and they realise that actually, on the whole, they are better off as a working class person under a Conservative government.
Well, there we go. Lee, it's been absolutely fantastic today, and thank you very much for hosting me in your constituency. We've spoken to a lot of independent councillors as well. Of course, Gloria De Piero as well, the former Labour MP for this area, and it's been interesting to get a flavour. I mean, look, why not, OK? We are outside the Nag's Head, which in a former life I would have crawled out of at some point earlier. Now joined by, who are you?
Sophie.
Sophie Hay.
Hello, Sophie. All right, well, look, thank you very much for popping along. Hey, why not? We're out and about. We might as well meet some real people. Sophie, can I ask you, OK? You know Lee Anderson very, very well. He's your local MP, right? What's the big issue facing you? What do you want the Prime Minister to do in this area for you?
Well, make pubs a bit more safer.
Say that again.
Make pubs safer.
Make pubs safer?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that's quite appropriate, really. We've got a load of kids over there, and we've got someone there, and this is a pub. Yes, indeed. Okay, so you don't feel safe in you. So this would say to me that maybe you want to see more police, maybe.
Yeah, and especially going to the pub on your own.
Safe in your own town, which is I think a perfectly reasonable thing to think, Sophie. Well, thank you very, very much, and it's great to hear you. I'm sure Lee is going to try and do absolutely everything that he can to make pubs safe for you. So great stuff. Look, I'm going to be talking about an absolute load of stuff, and if you want me to come to your town or area, I would love to. I really enjoy getting out and about and covering the stories that we've been talking about today, which is what real people actually really care about. Whether it's to do with immigration, both legal or illegal, whether it's to do with the cost of living crisis, whether it's to do with law and order, as you've just been hearing there, whether or not it's about the death of the high street. What I think is absolutely standout for me is that the Conservative Party are not shouting enough about the good things that they're doing. You would not know that this area had received 70 million quid. That is when people say, well, I haven't felt levelling up. That's something that they should be banging on about. And they're not really when it comes to that kind of stuff. You would have thought that it might be an easy win for them in places like this. Rational, normal, common sense individuals, for the most part, who basically think that a woman is a woman and a man is a man, and that's that the Conservative Party should be standing up for people like that. When you come to places like this, Sutton in Ashfield, the heart of the Red Wall, you do realise it's not rocket science for a political party to come here and win these seats, and with it, win the next general election. I'm going to be keeping a very close eye on what goes on here in Sutton, in Ashfield, and other seats like it as well. I would just like to say a massive thank you to everybody who's taken part in the show today and who's managed to put this kind of organised chaos together. I will be back in the Paddington studios tomorrow at 3 p.m. Jubes & Co is coming up next, so make sure that you stay tuned for that. I'm just going to bring Lee in now and just to say a massive thank you, Lee, as well. And Lee, you will be lighting up our screens very shortly with your own show, won't you?
Yes, I think it's the end of June, Patrick. It's going to be a Friday night spot about 7 o'clock, prime time. We're going to have some real common sense on there.
Lovely stuff. I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.
Hello again, it's Aidan McGibbon here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. Subtle changes in wind direction over the next few days will bring increasingly humid air, turning warmer, hot conditions for some by Saturday, but with the heat and humidity, the risk of thunderstorms in places. Low pressure is moving a little closer to the UK, albeit slowly. However, that's changing the wind direction. Rather than an easterly, we've got an increasingly southerly or southwesterly in some parts as we go through the next few days. And that means a chance of some showers, but also more and more humid and hot. First signs of that towards the southwest overnight with some light showers for Cornwall, and it's going to be a warmer night for the southwest, but elsewhere a cool night, a lot of low cloud advancing west, but for western Scotland clear skies and temperatures close to zero, so a real contrast up and down the country as we begin Friday. Any low cloud quickly retreats back to the North Sea coast, where it remains close to the beaches through the day on Friday. Otherwise, plenty of sunshine, and the heat is building by this stage, particularly towards the southwest. Here, 26, 27 Celsius, fairly likely. And on the east coast, we've still got the cool feel, so 13 to 15 Celsius within a few miles of the sea. But the low cloud in the east pushes its way westwards once again on Friday night. Meanwhile, some light showers for Cornwall during Friday, and they're going to push northeastwards during Saturday morning. Initially, they are light showers, but you can see the temperatures rising there overnight across the southwest, 16, 17 Celsius. So it's going to feel increasingly muggy at night, initially in the southwest and then more widely later in the weekend. But we start off Saturday with plenty of sunshine, and that change in wind direction will result in a marked change in temperatures, especially in the east, where 30